You are listening to episode 209 of Mitolife Radio. I am your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Stephen Arena of Masa Chips. Stephen has created healthy tortilla chips that actually taste good and are void of seed oils. So what makes them unique is that they're cooked in grass-fed beef tallow. So he shares his story of how he became inspired to create this product. He talks about the health effects of ingesting processed seed oils, the different vitamins and minerals present in his chips, and many other topics, including fat-soluble vitamins, the difference in bone density that modern humans have to our ancestors, why packaged foods often don't use animal products, hunter versus farmer genetics, bone broth, fasting, and so much more. So enjoy the show. Here is Stephen Arena. All right, Stephen Arena, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while online and spoke on the phone, and seems like we have a lot of things to talk about. And I've been loving your chips that you came out with recently. When did you come out with those, the Masa Chips?
So they launched, we sold our first bag in July. So it's been only pushing 6 months at this point. So yeah, wow. Not terribly long, but I'm happy with where we're at so far.
Yeah, they blew me away when you first sent me some. I'm like, oh, whatever, just some chips. You know, I've eaten, I was raised on like Tostitos. And so I wasn't expecting much, but when I took a bite, it was like, whoa, these taste like Tostitos, but way healthier.
It's like serious business. Yeah.
Right.
Most people, when they like encounter a health food, they think it's like, oh boy, they prepare for the cardboard and like, the chia seeds and like the gross, unpleasantness. So it's really a fun surprise when something that's like healthy actually turns out to be even like better than the quote unquote real thing.
Yeah, I've been handing them out to people, neighbors up here. I don't have many, but people that just come in the house, and they're always kind of skeptical. They're like, healthy chips, that's not really a selling point. I'm like, just eat one, and then they eat it, and they're like, oh wow.
Yeah, there's this weird cultural thing that Americans have, which is like healthy food must taste bad and good tasting food must be bad for me. It's like ingrained. I don't even know where it comes from exactly, but it seems like deeply rooted in like everyone's like collective psyche, which is a shame because, as you know, good food is both healthy and tastes good. And as many people I think are starting to know, good food is both healthy and tastes good. But the mainstream opinion is that those two things are very distinct.
That's a good point. And I think the whole sugar topic isn't really talked about correctly because people say, oh, it's foods that are loaded with sugar. They taste really good and they get people addicted. And although I'm doing like a no refined sugar experiment personally right now, I was going heavy on it the last like 3 years. I don't think that's it. I think what makes food addicting and taste good are all the other crap they put in it, right? Like the gums and the flavorings. It's not necessarily only the sugar.
The MSG, like the spices, like absolutely. Like, and yeah, sugar is like not as bad as people have been led to believe, but it's like, it's a convenient distraction. And like, that is the thing, right? If sugar's bad and sugar tastes good, well, okay, my world's upside down. I'll never be able to be healthy and eat the things I enjoy. But when you think about like the seed oils, of course, like no one thinks they taste good, right? Like no one wants to cook something with canola oil, like butter, tallow, olive oil, whatever, like these taste way better. So when you actually like, this is the cool thing about the seed oils. I think it's like a sort of a gateway drug in this sort of like learning process is that like, once you realize like, hey, here's this really bad thing for me that like actually tastes like neutral at best and terrible at worst. And I can replace it with healthier things that taste better. Well, what else can I replace with a healthier thing that tastes even better? It's very like paradigm shifting, I think, which is exciting to see.
Yeah. With the seed oils, I know I was introduced to it by Ray Pete, and is that kind of where you learned about it? Because now it's become like trendy, where like huge accounts are promoting it, and now it's getting a backlash where People are pointing out that it's trendy, but it seems like there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, they do cause fat gain, right? Fat storage.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the problems with seed oils are many. It's like every sort of chronic disease, you can find them implicated somewhere, which, I mean, I learned a lot about them from you, but I forget where the first person I heard about them from. It may have been like a very long article by, I want to say, like Chris Kresser or something. He had like a few years ago, well before like the seed oil trend nowadays, had like a very in-depth sort of study about like, hey, these like hyper processed oils are like not great. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like any reason to be eating like foods that are inherently artificial, right? Like, it's one thing to talk about supplements and medicines and like, you know, artificial problems and artificial solutions, like, which is very valid. Like, I have my little vial of methylene blue right on my desk. And that's obviously very artificial. But like, when it comes to food, it would be silly to expect that like a food that didn't exist throughout like all of human evolved history is like something that's actually like going to nourish us.
Yeah. So you're saying like seed oil fats didn't exist throughout history?
No,
Like,
no. I mean, seed oils. I have to turn my phone off. Seed oils, like, and specifically what we mean, like when people say seed oils, at least in the meme phrase,
right,
is not like a medicinal black cumin seed oil, or like cold pressed sesame seed oil used to like flavor stir fry in like the last 5 minutes before serving or something. It's like the hyper processed like vegetable cooking oils, you know, the corn oil, the soybean oil, the canola oil. Like, no, like humans never ate those things. Like, I don't care where you were or who you were, like without the technology to produce them, like they were not extractable from the raw materials. And so no one ever ate them in like isolation.
Yeah. That's a great argument against seed oils. That makes sense to me, because we were using, what were the traditional fats? It was like tallow, maybe bear fat.
Tallow, lard, lard in America, it was tallow and lard were like the most common. I mean, you have duck fat is a sort of like refined kind of like luxury, like French connotation, like, oh, duck fat potatoes and like a French, brasserie or whatever. But I mean, I guess bear fat, there's a fun anecdote about bear fat from like Weston Price's book about like this, the Native American couple, like where like the young, I think these are the Northern Canadian ones, where like if they couldn't get pregnant after getting married initially, they would send the man like to live by himself for 6 weeks on a diet of just like bear meat exclusively.
Wow.
With like bear fat and bear meat. And then he would like come back and then, you know, of course, get his wife pregnant. So there may be something going on with bear fat, but yeah, I think lard and tallow, and then butter, of course, are the primary cooking fats, like in Western Europe and America.
Have you ever encountered a bear like on a hike?
I never have. No. Have you?
Yeah, it's like encountering an alien. It's interesting because there's just the consciousness behind those eyes. Like you feel it's different from like encountering a deer or elk or something like that.
They're smart.
Yeah. I saw like a black bear cub on my property like 4 or 5 months ago, like the end of summer, whatever. And yeah, fortunately it was a cub. And it was just like, what's this thing? Just like staring at me.
Didn't know what it was. Brown bears around there?
Oh, tons of I'm in the center of grizzly country. Yeah. So I always carry a gun and bear spray, just what it is. But yeah, that's an interesting fact about the bear fat. Did you ever look into like cod liver oil? Because I got pretty deep into Rosita, and on their website they have a cool write up on like the traditional use of it and how over time it was extracted.
Yeah, I cod liver oil is very controversial. Like shockingly controversial for such a simple seeming thing. I mean, so I've taken the blue ice cod liver oil pills. There was like a few months back in the day when I would take those because it was disgusting. So I would never like drink it, and I would take it in the pill form. But then I was like, I stopped because of like burping up fish oil flavor, and I'm like, how is something that's good for me like this unpleasant, right? Like it doesn't necessarily make sense. But then on the same time, I've heard you talk about the difference between like the fermented cod liver oil, which is like what the blue ice one is, or the blue pastures, or I don't know, whatever it is, versus Rosita, which is like not fermented. And so I don't know if that makes a difference. It's something that I wouldn't. And the other thing to me is also like, because and this is something you mentioned, which I thought was really thought provoking, like PUFAs and HUFAs, right, are like antifreeze. they're found in places in nature where it's very cold. And so they allow fat, and like they allow the usage of fat in the physiological system to be liquid at those temperatures. So it keeps the fish from being solid. And I'm like thinking, well, so if cold water fish have high PUFAs and warm water fish don't, and the people who eat cold water fish naturally live in cold area climates like Northern Europe, like the Vikings, like maybe there's an angle there where it makes sense for them. But like as someone, my ancestry is from Italy, Southern Italy and Sicily. And so where there's no, cod livers, and it's a little cold, but it's not, Viking North. Like, might it make sense that like Vikings can get away with eating cod liver oil in the winter, but other peoples that had different climatic and like environmental circumstances might not benefit from it? So that's my latest thinking on it.
It makes sense. Yeah, it's a fun thing to meditate on for sure. I'm also Italian, if those DNA sites are correct. I don't know.
Yes.
But yeah, if someone lives in Ecuador or Costa Rica or Hawaii, they probably don't want to take large amounts of cod liver oil, especially long term, right? Maybe for an acute vitamin A or D deficiency or whatever.
So you take it, do you take it all year round or just in the winter?
Well, I've been taking it year round. I started early last year, I think around February or so, I got on it. And yeah, I felt that antifreeze effect immediately because I would go out to milk my goat and my hands would just be kind of numb from the cold. And it doesn't get super below 0 Fahrenheit here, but we get into the -5 for a couple weeks, and then it kind of hovers around the single digit Fahrenheit temps.
That's pretty cold. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely felt an immediate, because the pro-metabolic, repeat people would say that it was suppressing my thyroid function and suppressing lowering my metabolic rate. But my experience was the opposite of that.
So you actually got warmer when it was cold outside for having eaten it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
My girlfriend.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
My girlfriend, she grew up in North Carolina and went to school in Miami, where it's obviously very warm, and has never really experienced a full winter. Now, she's living up in New Jersey with me, and she's been I don't know, not adjusting 100% perfectly. And I'm thinking maybe we should get her some cod liver oil,
It's a good idea. Yeah, I think the quality matters for sure. But yeah, I like to go off experience. I mean, clinical studies are so interesting, but we have to go off our experience with them, right? We can't just
One of the wild things about studies, and granted, it's not a clinical study because it's rats. I was browsing through my notes the other day, and I just happened upon this thing. It lists the ingredients in the standard lab chow that they feed rats in a laboratory setting. And what's crazy about this is that all the rats and all the experiments are 1 or 2 DNA clones. They're all the same, and they do this to isolate variables and whatever. So they're all cloned rats, and they all feed them the same thing, and they're all so it's very standardized. So whenever you do an experiment, you're okay, I really isolated those variables. Scientists can tell themselves. But then you read the ingredients in the standard lab chow, which is the food that they just feed all rats under all circumstances, unless there's a dietary intervention in the experiment. And the diet is 30% PUFAs.
Wow.
For rats who so first of all, there's a ton of problems with this. Granted, I don't know exactly what rats would eat in the wild. However, I do know that an indigenous sort of ancestral human diet would be less than 2% PUFAs. So already we're looking at close to 20% increase over what the baseline should be. And so that confounds every single experiment ever done with a rat, because they're eating a diet which is ostensibly completely unnatural to it. So when they, a very obvious example of this is when they put rats under UV light and they're oh, the rat got skin cancer or developed sunburn or whatever. Well, how do you know it's because of the UV light and not because of the unnatural lab chow you're feeding them? Where's the experiment done on a rat, a natural rat diet? It doesn't exist. So it's you have to call into question basically every study that's ever been done on a rat because of this.
It's a great point. Have you, on that same note, have you looked into the sugar is inflammatory meme? Because people, their argument against that meme is that all those studies done with sugar and increasing obesity and inflammatory markers, those are all done in the presence of PUFA. being in the
yeah,
feed too. You
of
seen
course.
that? Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, they're like compounding. It's compounding every single experiment, like on diet or anything else, because like, well, do we know? And then also people talk about like a high fat diet or a low fat diet. The keto people like to talk about this, but it's like, well, what's the fat in question in the high fat or the low fat diet? Like, oh, a high fat diet's bad. Well, is it because it's a high PUFA fat diet, or is it a high saturated fat diet? All of these things matter. And it's the same thing that people talk about fried foods are bad. Is the act of frying a food problematic? Or is like the ingredients in which you're frying, the circumstance, the settings, whatever, is that what makes fried foods bad? If the argument is that fried foods are bad because like heated oils like degrade, well, I'm here to tell you that like frying is, as someone who's fried a lot of foods over the past few months, because we make Masa Chips like by hand, oils for frying are kept at like around 300 to 350 degrees. But like standard like roasting in an oven pushes 400, pan frying, sauteing, 450, 500, broiling, 500 degrees, barbecue, grilling, like 500 to 700 degrees, pizza oven, 700 degrees. Frying is one of like the actually lowest temperature things you do with oil in the kitchen. So it's like, is the argument that the oils are heated? Well, clearly not. Well, maybe it's like the oils themselves, right? And so that's how we get to the whole fried foods thing. Well, is it the fried foods? No, it's just the seed oils, right?
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, because one of my guilty pleasures is French fries, and being up here, there's some really good spots with like actual local grass-fed burgers and French fries. But I know the oil they're cooking the fries in is not ideal. But that makes me feel better because I've heard Dave Asprey say on his reels, I would rather smoke a cigarette, a conventional Marlboro cigarette, than eat fried foods. It's like eating fried foods is the worst possible thing you do for your health. And I kind of question that. Like,
I mean, I think it's like there's probably truth in that, but it's like got to be more specific. It's like fried foods and seed oils,
right?
Especially like dirty old seed oils is probably the thing in question. I would personally rather smoke a cigarette than eat a seed oil fried standard thing, but I would obviously rather eat a tallow fried thing because that's genuinely healthy now because like now we have actual nutrient density. The frying, like 350 degrees is not that hot for tallow. You have organic potatoes, you get some like good starch, whatever other micronutrients they have. Like that's a health food right there.
You mentioned recycle. That's what they do at a lot of fast food joints, right? Is they just use the seed oils to fry with like a donut shop just over and over. They just keep
they'll so in the kitchen we started out in, it was shared with like this I guess empanada company, like local empanadas. They made empanadas for like some local winery. And so they had their own fryer, which was the seed oil fryer. And we had our fryer, which was the tallow fryer. And I would just like look into their fryer when they weren't there. And it's just like this black pit of despair. Like it's dark. It's completely opaque. You can't see more than like a half an inch deep into that thing. Wow. There could have been like bugs that were like on the ceiling and like fell into the fryer and like sunk to the bottom, then like they would have no way of seeing them or noticing them. They didn't even keep it closed or covered like when it wasn't in use. And you can't see through it. And it's like I would stick my nose in there and it would just smell like like a carnival, right? Like funnel cakes and Ferris wheels, whatever. It smelled like a way worse version of that. It was repugnant. But then I would like stick my nose in my fryer with the tallow and I was like, yeah, it smells like fat, right? But it's subtle, it's smooth, it's pleasant. It was like a wild difference. And like once again, like most people's entire exposure for their entire life to fried foods is gross seed oil fried foods. Like that's a very specific type of fried foods. And it's like the world is much bigger, try something else. But yeah, seed oil fried foods are terrible.
That's pretty gross. Yeah. I've been trying to encourage people the last few years to open a seed oil free donut shop, but it seems like a really expensive endeavor because even using like coconut oil would be crazy.
Coconut oil is pretty expensive. Right. Coconut oil is actually more expensive than tallow.
Wow.
Yeah. So tallow is of course more expensive. It's like 3 to 6 times the price of seed oils, depending like per amount, depending on, how it's used and whatnot. But yeah, part of the problem with opening a sort of like in-person business like this, is that, there's hundreds, thousands of people in the country who would like want to eat your seed oil free French fries and like your raw milk milkshakes and your grass-fed burgers and sourdough buns. Like that would be amazing. However, all of those thousands of people don't necessarily like live within 5 miles of one location where you could open up such a business.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, LA is probably the best one, right?
I think Austin, because there actually are like there's quite a few seed oil free, like explicitly seed oil free restaurants in Austin, and they do really well. They're like they're very cutting edge on the whole like regenerative agriculture, beef, pasture raised, seed oils, tallow, whatever. Like I went to a restaurant there and had chicken heart skewers, like with sauteed onions, and like for a side we got like tallow fried fries, and there was like biodynamic wine. It was it was amazing.
Yeah, I saw some of your videos with your girlfriend. Like you guys were eating pretty adventurous nose to tail stuff. Like what was it? Yeah. A goat head, I think the one I watched.
We ate a lamb head. Goat head would be a bit satanic. We had a lamb head. It was very funny. We were at the farmer's market, and like we encountered a new like meat stand, and the guy, like in talking to one of the guys who was there, he quickly realized that we, knew what we were talking about in regard to health. And he was like, the seed oils, those omega-6s are bad. And I was like, oh yeah, we know, and he was like, oh, okay. He started saying, salt is good for you, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, we know. And he was like, you guys would like this. I have a lamb head. We don't get these in very often, but it's like quite a delicacy, but it has to I want it to only go to the right person. Most people wouldn't appreciate this. And so he just gave it to us and we didn't pay for it. And it was like a lamb head with the eyeballs and the teeth and the cheeks and the jaws and the whole thing. And it was quite interesting. It looked a lot worse than it tasted. I'll say that.
It was mostly the texture, I think I heard you say in the video or something.
Yeah, the texture of some of the parts, like the tongue, I couldn't do. The tongue also had a pretty bad flavor. But the cheek meat was amazing, actually. It was quite tender, quite juicy. We did not eat the brains, but I'm pretty sure they dissolved into the broth. We did eat one of the eyeballs, which didn't really taste like much at all. The broth was just like onions and like it was for sure mostly the image of it, like because like you open the little crock pot and there's like teeth and like a nose and like staring at you. It was terrifying. It looked like those things in Halloween, those little Halloween decorations that they have where it's like a plastic witch or like a little skull or whatever. It was like that, but like real.
Yeah, that's the most adventurous thing I've had yet is roadkill backstrap from a local deer, and that tasted good. But I'm sure it was the spices on it. It tasted really great. But.
Yeah, that sounds. Have you ever had testicles?
Just in capsules. Yeah, I don't. Oh, actually, I've had Rocky Mountain oysters. Yeah, once. Yeah, but they were fried with probably canola oil, and they tasted like chicken nuggets from McDonald's, kind of. Yeah,
I mean, we've had a couple lamb testicles, and they are really good. I actually think of all the organs, they have the most pleasant flavor and texture. Like you wouldn't really know that there's anything weird about them. It's like they're very juicy, very tender, and very mild is how I would describe them. So, I mean, honestly, they're very hard to find, and everyone eats liver. Everyone talks about liver. Like liver tastes disgusting compared to testicles. So I definitely would encourage anyone listening to go try those out if they're interested in getting into some organ meats.
Yeah, I need to get back on the raw liver because I definitely felt a difference versus just the capsules. And I'm a wuss. I don't chew it or enjoy it. I just cut it up and just swallow them. Whole and raw. I just thaw them out and freeze little bits.
Yeah, I do that with orange juice.
Nice.
So you really don't taste it. You put a little it's not a chaser because it's beforehand. Get a little bit of orange juice in your mouth, then put some of the liver chunks in a spoon and just swallow the whole thing. Like you literally do not taste any liver flavor.
Wow. Have you tried the maple syrup thing? Because I think that's what the Liver King is talking about.
Yeah, he would dip. I try to avoid having to chew liver if at all possible. I would try it, but I have not yet done that. I think the orange juice swallowing thing, just get it out of the way, make it easy.
Nice. So Masa Chips, what inspired you to start that company and start selling chips? Was there an event?
There what actually was about a year ago. There was an event. I was on a New Year's trip in Miami with some of my friends from college. And we were eating, I think one of them, it was they were probably hungover. And someone ordered tacos from Uber Eats or whatever. And it's Miami, so like the tacos are considered good. And it came with chips that were like, they smell good, they look good, classic, like, oh wow, delicious corn chips. And my friends are just like picking out on them, and I'm like, looking at them judgmentally from around the corner, and like, those are, you realize how bad seed oils are, right? And it like started this whole, like, I was like making fun of them, and they were like, they retorted like, well, yeah, but we actually enjoy our life, blah blah blah, like being healthy is so boring. And I'm like, it's not that like I wouldn't eat chips, I just wouldn't eat bad chips. Like there are plenty of like good ways to make foods that you think are bad for you, as we talked about. And so I started describing how, like, you could fry things in tallow, like Belgian French fries. Belgium, best in the world. They fry everything in tallow. You use organic corn, blah, blah, blah. And so it turned into this one of these things of like, well, okay, why don't we make them? Because no one else is doing it. And so ultimately we did. I, after unsuccessfully trying to find some sort of third-party factory to manufacture for us, Easter of last year, I like bought a turkey fryer from Costco, a whole thing of tallow, and like I got some organic corn tortillas, chopped them up, and like fried them and served them to my family, and everyone like loved them. And I was like, okay, wow, we're really onto something here, because like that's the trick, right? Like the combination of like, it's a health food, but it actually tastes good. That's the sort of novel thing that like people are not used to and people don't expect. And so once we realized we had that, it was like, okay, we have to bring this out there. Like people need to know what they're missing, basically. And then from there, we, figured out ingredients, suppliers, getting kitchen, packaging, all this stuff. And then we, started selling them in July.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard some people say there's only, 8 or 9 chips in the bag, but they're so filling that I've eaten like 3 bags at a time of your chips. Yeah. And it was too much. My body after that,
way too much.
You went overboard.
For sure. So I will have to correct. It's like 18 to 20 chips per 2-ounce bag. I will have to make a correction. But yeah, I actually think one of the 2-ounce bags is a pretty solid portion for like a grown man. I mean, maybe 1.5 if you're like really trying to, bulk up or something. But one of the bags that I think is a fine portion. And one of the interesting things here about tallow is that there's a thing with seed oils that basically like doesn't allow your cells to like signal that you're full when you eat them. So you just like end up eating more calories than you otherwise would. I believe for the biologically inclined, it's like the FADH to NADH ratio. That is like a feature of different sorts of like hydrocarbons that you can eat. And so this ratio determines like the amount of like fullness signaling hormone that your cells will emit. And the ratio for seed oils is such that it basically never gets emitted. And so I've encountered a study where they fed a bunch of kids like they said to the kids, okay, eat however much you want until you're full. And the different food groups were like some carb plus some fat. And there were different combinations like potato, canola oil, butter, whatever. And when it was carb plus seed oils, the kids ate about 300 to 500 more calories per meal until they were full, compared to the butter plus the carb. Wow. So the conclusion, of course, being like you get fuller on tallow because your body is basically able to recognize it as fat, which is much more nutrient dense than other like macronutrient sources. It's much more calorie dense than other macronutrient sources. So your body is able to recognize that when it's saturated fat and shut off the hunger hormone appropriately, which prevents you from overeating.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, I've sat in the man cave with friends, eating a whole bag of chips in one sitting in the past, and that doesn't seem healthy.
No.
I mean,
I mean, that's an entire bag of Tostitos. Like, oh my God.
Or even healthy chips. I mean, we'd go to Whole Foods or whatever health food store, and these are okay to eat, but it's yours are the cleanest I've ever seen.
Yeah. Most of the healthy chips are just like, it's organic canola oil. Oh yeah. Those organic GMO rapeseed farms. Like, yeah. Okay, great. like up in Canada, like, oh yeah, it's organic sunflower oil. Or one of my favorites is like the high oleic safflower oil or whatever it is. Cause it's like, oh, it's like olive oil. Yes. Traditionally consumed, throughout the Mediterranean for like thousands of years, those sunflowers, squeezing each individual seed to get like the microscopic drop of oil out. Um, yeah, no, the corn chips especially, it's pretty terrible out there. Like I've never seen, well, that's not true. I've actually seen a corn chip fried in coconut oil. That's the only non-seed oil I've ever really seen. And it wasn't good because when you deep fry things in coconut oil, they feel very greasy in the mouth. It's like very unpleasant.
I think I've had that. Have you seen the Himalayan sea salt trend? Because I go to the health food store now and I just see like a quarter of them have Himalayan sea salt on the front of the bag in large letters, like they're marketing that. I'm like, what? Aren't there more interesting other salts you could use?
As if that were like the most important thing for them to focus on. Like, oh yes, eat our Himalayan sea salt chips with sunflower oil and like non-organic corn. It's like, so I went to Palm Springs outside of Los Angeles not too long ago. And Palm Springs is famous for its hot springs. Like it's a resort town for that reason. And we were like calling all the resorts and asking them like, hey, so like you guys don't put chlorine in your natural spring water, right? And they're like, oh no, we do. Like, and apparently the EPA or someone, the CDC requires that like all of these sort of commercially operated like hot springs like have bleach in them. And it's like, dude, you're sitting here offering on your website, relax in our mineral rich, magnesium soaked, water and like good for your skin and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and then you're just going to put chlorine in it. Like it defeats the entire purpose.
That's horrible. Have you ever been to Idlewild right next to Palm Springs, the mountains?
Idlewild?
Idlewild. It's right next to Palm Springs. Like you go up the mountain.
No, we stayed in Joshua Tree in like the desert there, but I've never been to that mountain. No.
I recommend it. They have really good Italian restaurant. I'm really picky with Italian restaurants. I only count on one hand good ones I've found.
It's a town. There's the name of the mountain.
It's the town. Yeah, okay. It's like a really small mountain town, but it's
okay, cool.
Kind of somewhat of a hippie vibe. There's a little crystal shop and
classic. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. I love that you started with the turkey fryer at Costco. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's how I got into supplements. Is I just head first just dove in. I think that's the best way to learn versus.
Yeah, you have to like do it yourself.
Right.
I think there's a lot of value in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And also what blew my mind with your product was the potassium content. I think on the bag, what is it? 40% of the daily value of potassium intake? I forget. It's something crazy. It's maybe 20%.
I will have to check. I have one right here. Potassium is no, it's 70 milligrams per bag is 140 milligrams, which is actually 2% of the daily value.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a ton. I mean, it is Redmond salt, so like there's definitely micronutrient content there, like the ancient sea salt, which is cool. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily a high source of micro minerals. I think the vitamin content that's like valuable that you get is from the tallow. So like the vitamin A and the vitamin K2, which actually is not even listed on the label because the USDA doesn't think that there's nutrients in tallow.
That's wild. Did you try to put it on there or?
Well, so there's a fun little thing. And I don't think many people know this, but like when you put a nutrient label on a bag or on a packaged food, you don't actually like go to a chemistry lab and measure it like with instruments and like figure out the results and put it on there. There's no samples that need to be collected. Like what you do is you look up the nutrients based on the USDA's like standard database of like nutritional content of like every ingredient. And you basically add up like the grams of your ingredient and like multiply the grams of ingredient times like each nutrient content per that, unit of ingredient as per their database. And you just add them up and that's how you get a number. It's actually kind of shocking. So, I mean, I don't really personally focus on nutrition facts anyway. So like, it wasn't a big deal for me. I care more about like, of course, the actual ingredients. I'm not a huge numbers guy. But it's very interesting just to note that like, basically what's on the back of nutrient labels is completely BS.
Yeah. And a lot of people use like chronometer. So they could be getting less or more. They have no idea, right?
No, I have no idea. And people are like tracking And it's like, okay, great. You're tracking your sodium intake or your like fat grams intake, but like you have no idea that the thing that you're tracking is like actually real. Like, is it actually like 10 grams of fat or is it 20 grams of fat? You have no clue. Is it this many grams of protein? Is that many grams of protein? And then, okay, great. You counted up all this. Let's pretend you actually had an accurate number. Well, so what does that mean for your body? Do you know like how many grams of protein your body utilizes? Like which amino acids? Like, do you actually measure this? Can you measure this? Is it even possible to measure this? It all seems it's like this like false precision to me. And I think like what you were mentioning about with the cod liver oil before, which I don't know if we had been recording at the time, but you were talking about how cod liver oil made you, wait, were we recording? I don't know. Anyway, point is you were like, it made me feel good. So therefore it's probably good, right? Like that's what matters, like if you want to measure something and people are like, oh, I need to cut my calories. Like, do you know how many calories you burn on a daily basis? 3,000, 2,500? You have no idea. Okay, maybe you can measure it once somehow with some process that is like, unknown to me. Let's say you measured it. Well, what's it going to be the next day, right? You wake up and your heart's beating slightly faster because like you went to bed late last night. Well, you burn more calories. And now, right? Like it's kind of, I'm not going to say a waste of time completely. Like people have to just be very careful understanding the limitations of the things that they're measuring. Otherwise, it will lead to a sense of false precision and confidence in things that don't actually matter.
Mm. You've never used like an Oura ring?
Oh, I have. Oura ring is, I have stopped wearing mine, just like got in the way, but like, it was cool to see like resting heart rate. Like, that's great. But like at the same time, it's like, I wake up in the morning and I feel good or I feel bad. I don't need the thing to tell me. It's like you wake up and you didn't sleep well and you're like, I feel like shit. And then you see the app and you're like, oh yeah, I definitely feel like shit. Like, okay, thank you. But like my girlfriend uses the Oura ring to like track her cycle, and like that I think is pretty useful because it has the thermometer feature. So it's not that all measurement is inherently bad. It's just that like you have to be aware of the limitations and the accuracy of what you're measuring. And obviously some things are way easier to measure than others, like heart rate and body temperature.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Have you heard of the device? I forget what it was called, that supposedly you could point it at like a vegetable and hit a button and it'll scan it and then have a readout of the nutrients. I feel like we're coming up on that, or that should already exist. I mean, I don't see
that would be amazing. I've definitely heard of things like this. It always in like a sort of sci-fi, like it doesn't actually exist yet kind of way. But I mean, that would be so cool. It's like very Star Trek, right? That little device they hold up and like they tell if someone's like sick or what's wrong with them or whatever. I mean, I question the ability of a device to like ever be able to do that. Like people don't even know, are unable to like give accurate results on samples in like an actual lab, right? Like, and you've talked about this a lot about like vitamin D, like trying to measure that. Like, well, how many different forms of vitamin D are there? Or vitamin K. Okay, there's vitamin K1, K2. I think there's K3. There might be a K4. And then there's like MK2, MK7, or MK2, MK, I forget. Whatever. There's like a million different forms. Like, are you measuring all of them? Like, do you know that you're getting all of them? Like, you have no idea. And so then to think that you're going to put all of this stuff into a little device that's just like optically measuring the thing, like you have no idea. Like, you don't know. Right.
It's a good point. Yeah. I recently learned from my friend at Gembered that like I use the Apple Watch, and that it reads your heart rate and blood oxygen and all the other stuff, just like the Oura Ring does. The Oura Ring uses infrared light and red light, and then the new Gen 3 uses green light too, which I don't necessarily like, but while you're sleeping. But I learned that they actually measure by shooting light through your wrist. And, since your blood's red, hemoglobin is that red color, it'll see how much is absorbed or reflected. And that's how it determines. And then green lights for blood oxygen. So each different frequency of light is being used to measure something else, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so I think like it really depends on what you're trying to measure. So like oxygen content in the blood is probably pretty easy to do, because you just have to like measure the absorbance or reflection of like that one wavelength and whatnot. And you can like get a whole bunch of people in like a lab, donate blood, see the blood oxygen levels, shine the light, see what the average is, whatever. Pretty simple. but like fat soluble, like minerals also. Okay, a bit more complicated, but like still simple. All right, calcium, fine. We can probably like dissolve that, and you can use like electrolysis, not electrolysis, but like an electrometer or a voltometer or whatever, and like dissolve it in water and see what the conduction is like. I actually worked at sort of like a chemistry instrument company for like a few months as an intern when I was in school that made devices that did this sort of thing. So it would be able to measure like the presence of certain like ionic compounds, which most minerals are, right? You can dissolve them in water. They change like the way that electricity flows through water. Cool, great. Even that's like a whole complicated thing because there's not just one substance in the water, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's calcium carbonate and there's like magnesium sulfate and there's all these things. Like, how do you know which one is which? So it gets more complicated. But fat soluble vitamins, like that's actually hard. And from what I understand, there's not really a way to do that without actually taking a sample and running it through like a gas chromatographer, which is like this like room-sized machine. Right. I don't know there's a way that you can shine light through it and see how much vitamin K2 there is. I mean, it would be cool if someone could figure this out. I'm not saying it wouldn't be nice to know these things. It's just I have my doubts about the actual practicality of like being able to do that.
Yeah, good points. Did you ever get into supplementing? Because it sounds like you're a huge fan of A, D, E, and K, the fat soluble vitamins. And
yeah,
I've been beating the drum for the last year or two, and recently more on the vitamin A and D front because you need all four. Mm-hmm. Did you, like you mentioned Weston A Price, did you ever supplement them in isolation? Like I know, you know, retinol palmitate is the most popular one, and then cholecalciferol, and then you have alpha tocopherol or mixed tocopherols, and then
I used to supplement vitamin D orally. And I think that was the first one that I ever did. I mean, that's very popular. Everyone does that. But then I noticed this thing where like, if I took a bunch of vitamin D, I would like pass out. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And then I started learning more about rat poison, which I'm sure, I'm sure you've talked about this as well. Like cholecalciferol, like is an active ingredient in like many rat poisons. That's like the form of vitamin D3 that's in most supplements, because it pulls calcium out of the hard tissues and sends them into the soft tissues. And I mean, the thinking is that rats, due to the way their small intestine works, are uniquely susceptible to this. That's why it's toxic for them. But it's like not for dogs and cats and probably not humans. But it turns out, lo and behold, that when dogs eat rat poison, like oftentimes they die. So that may not be so clear. So yeah, I don't take oral D3 anymore. I try to get sun. And I think if I were to have to supplement some kind of D3 thing, I would probably put it on my skin, as that would bypass the small intestine and like the issue with the calcium thing, I think. But I don't really supplement it. I just try to get sunlight. Vitamin A, from what I've seen, all synthetic supplementation forms of vitamin A are toxic. So, I mean, there's a ton of different formats of it, but like what's the one? Accutane, right? Like that's an isomer of vitamin A, right? That's like causes like DNA damage, right? People can take it for their skin. So I've never supplemented that. I have supplemented vitamin E. I always take one of your Mitolife vitamin E's whenever I am eating out at a restaurant of uncertain heritage. And I have taken vitamin K2 in isolation as well. The Mitolife one, of course. I actually noticed definitely an effect from that. I could swear that it made my bones more dense because like I started taking vitamin K2 and I had never supplemented before after I like found your product. Which let me know when it's back in stock, by the way, because I need more.
It is.
Oh, it is. Finally is. Okay, I'll have to order some. I was out for a while. And so I started taking it, and like I could have sworn over like 2 months, I didn't visibly look heavier. I didn't visibly like gain body fat or body mass, but I weighed myself and I was like 10 pounds heavier. And I'm like, it may be far-fetched and like maybe there's something else that I'm like failing to recognize here, but I could have sworn that like taking vitamin K2 put more calcium into my bones and just like increase my bone density, which is like a pretty reasonable thing actually to expect when supplementing vitamin K2 for the first time. So I thought that was cool.
That's pretty awesome. Wow. That's a cool testimony. You weren't eating like bags and bags of Masa chips then?
Mm. This was pre-Masa, and
Okay.
and like I was like looking at myself, right? My clothes fit the same. Like my visibly my physique did not change. It was just my weight gained somehow.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Have you ever heard of OsteoStrong? I only used it once at the Bulletproof conference years ago, but you like pretty much it's like this AI computer controlled thing where you cause microfractures in your bone and you use it like once a week. You have to go to a facility. I think that
Interesting.
if you want to buy it's like 100K or more. But yeah, John Jaquish, I had on my podcast,
Interesting.
invented it for his osteoporosis his mom was diagnosed with.
Huh.
But pretty interesting. Yeah, the bone
It's
density is kind of
interesting.
overlooked.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge thing. So like I'm a big fan of Weston Price book, which I mean a lot of people talk about him, but I don't know that many people actually read the book, like cover to cover. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. And one of the things that stands out to me is he compares like the skulls of sort of like the modern Peruvian people who like died recently with like the remains of the skulls from like the versions of them that lived like 1,000 years ago, because like they had a lot of mummies in Peru from like the Incas. And like he shows a cross section side by side, and like the modern skull is like half as thick as like the 1,000-year-old skull. And it's like the skull itself, like the walls of the skull. And it's like, I mean, just obviously imagine how much heavier that is, imagine how much more durable that guy's head is, imagine like how much he could like bang his head against his enemies or who knows what, more susceptible to the sorts of injuries and concussion, or less susceptible to injuries and concussions. Like that's a huge difference. And it was funny. I saw also on Instagram recently, someone was talking about how wood is less dense today, like lumber, like to build a house is less dense today than it used to be, because they like basically give the trees fertilizer and do a whole bunch of forestry techniques to make them grow faster. And so the layers are thicker, like the rings, like each tree layer of new bark is thicker, but it's like less dense. And so the wood is weaker. And it's like a similar kind of thing. It's like, are we literally like mechanically weaker, like on a skeletal level than like our ancestors, because like we don't have enough K2 and calcium and whatnot.
That is fascinating. Wow. Have you heard the EMF thing about, because I've been looking at every side of that now, where, having a baby, babies with thinner skulls, because they haven't fully developed yet, they're more susceptible to electromagnetic field.
Makes sense.
Penetrating the brain, getting
that
to the
would
brain.
Make sense. I had thought about that, but that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's probably, it's probably multiple benefits. Like having a thicker skull.
Yeah, like thicker skin, thicker skull, less sensitive. Perfect. Another reason to cancel the Wi-Fi when we get pregnant, which knows when that'll happen. But yeah, interesting to think about. Yeah, the whole baby thing, like, I mean, it's kind of crazy because my mom has actually been like very frustrated with me at times, because after I like learned all this stuff about health and like development, whatever, I'm just like, I could have been so much more, like I could have, stronger bones and wider jaw and like thicker teeth and like be taller and thicker wrists and like less gut issues. And who knows, I probably missed out on like 10, 15 IQ points that I might have been able to have. Right. Not that I'm hurting in any way. However, like what could have been, and so I'll always like talk about these things, and she'll be like, I did the best I could, and get very upset about this. But I'm like, we have such an opportunity, like our sort of type of people who like know all this stuff, to be able to have like superhuman children, being able to like counteract all the stuff in the modern world and like benefit from like all the resources that it has, right? Like, sure, we have more toxicity that we're exposed to and all these things and EMFs and pollution and whatnot, but we also can like eat basically infinite quantities of like pasture-raised beef and like liver at all times of the year. And like we have access to like pounds and pounds of organic tropical fruit anywhere in the, like most of the places in the country throughout most of the year, like all the raw honey I could possibly eat, which are like the types of nutrient dense foods our ancestors had to struggle really hard to go and obtain. So it's like, yes, there's a lot of toxicity, but there's also a lot of benefits. So if you're able to reduce the former and take advantage of the latter, like who knows the type of the type of generation we can like raise, doing things the right way.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's something I've thought of a lot. And it kind of sucks when you have that realization.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I was like a C student. I think I even failed classes in college multiple times my first couple of years, and it's just embarrassing looking back. So it's like, you're capable of more, but you have this limitation. So I think that's what drew me to like biohacking and all this, nootropic, brain boosting stuff and all the brain health stuff, because, like hyperbaric is good for reversing brain damage, traumatic brain injury, but brain damage in general once it's happened, which I feel like we've all had to some degree.
Yeah.
Growing up being K2 deficient and all this stuff, all the toxicities.
Like the heavy metals and like the leaky gut and like that whole thing, like aluminum in my brain and like all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, like if you think, people will like to say that like, oh, humans are getting smarter, we know more, blah, 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 we're more capable. But it's like, think about the people who built like the George Washington Bridge, like the architects who designed the George Washington Bridge did not have a computer or a calculator. Like they had to do multiplication addition with like a slide rule, like on paper. And they built the George Washington Bridge and like not a single person died. And like they did it in like a year. Like I live in the Northeast, and like they built a new bridge over the Hudson River between New York and I think like New Jersey or New York and Connecticut. I don't know, called like redoing the Tappan Zee Bridge is what it was called. And like it took them like 5 years. And it's like, yeah, it's a nice bridge and it's big and like cool, that's great. Like it took these people 5 years, and yet they have access to like the budget of like one of the largest state governments in like New York state budget is like bigger than like, most countries' GDP. And they have computers and solid CAD design software and like simulating software. They have access to like an entire body of like, what is it, like stochastic physics that like tells people like how materials behave like in like under pressure, all these things. And yet it took them like 5 years to do this, and it's like ugly, I'm like, how did people do this stuff back then? And it's like, well, the answer is they were smarter, like a lot smarter.
Did you ever get into like, for a while I was on a Graham Hancock kick and looked into I think there was a documentary just came out. I kind of want to see that on ancient civilizations, but go Gebla Tepe. It's a really hard word to say. That's the one he talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But I've watched some pretty interesting documentaries, and back in my new age days, I read countless channeled books about Atlantis and, Lemuria and stuff.
Classic.
But I feel like people think this is our most advanced we've ever been, but it seems like we used to be more advanced in the past, which is so counter to what most people believe.
Far from it. I mean, so I think it appears that we're advanced because we have like a continually building body of like technology that we can access, which does more and more and more for us. So like we do less and less and less. So it's like, if you think about all the technology to which you have access to is like this circle or whatever, that, and like all the humans around it as like small little tiny dots, right? That big circle of technology gets bigger. And even though the dots like get smaller, like our individual performance gets smaller, because of technology's massive capabilities, like the total performance still increases. And I think that's like the distinction that people fail to make. The difference between like the resources and the world that's been built for us, like the body of knowledge that's been built for us over thousands of years by other people, that's still preserved. And like between that knowledge and like the knowledge and capacities that we as individuals have. I mean, just think about language, right? Like the people who like used to memorize and prepare speeches. Like, so I studied a bit of ancient Greek in college, and like we read one of Plato's dialogues, which is like when Socrates, it's called the Apology, when Socrates is like giving his testimony about like, in court when they want to sentence him to death for corrupting the youth or whatever. And it's like, it took us like 2 months, like as people with like relatively high IQs and access to like apps and dictionaries, like written dictionaries and like pencils and pens and whatever. It took us 2 weeks to like get through that book. And the book is like literally one speech that took him 45 minutes to deliver, like extemporaneously, like live. And like this language that's like so complex, like the sentences are like half a page, an entire page long. And he's like saying this like live. And like the way the grammar works is like, it's really crazy because like you might have to wait like 3 phrases later to say a word that like relates back to a first word, and like it has to be conjugated in the right way. And it's like, how are you doing this live, right? These people didn't have pens and pencils and dictionaries and whatever, and yet like the everyday citizens like knew this language and could speak it productively. And yet like our scholars like try really, really hard and still fail to be able to do it. The language one is probably the real kicker for me, I think. But yeah, I mean, they're just way smarter then, but they had less technology, and therefore they were able to do less than we can.
That's a really interesting point, because now we have like Chat GPT, this AI stuff, and I knew we were gonna get it seems like a theme now with every show. I have to ask the guest about artificial intelligence, but that's Elon Musk's long-term vision for Neuralink. Is it's going to allow an interface where we can communicate. It's almost like communicating with aliens. You know, if people, some people don't believe they'll ever be fully self-conscious. I believe it's possible. You know, the singularity or whatever. But it seems to go to a language thing with the AI, right? And it seems like right now, like humans are handicapped, nutritional deficiencies, toxicities, and all these tech people are like, well, let's just create AI that you know will go back to those speeches, that quality, and even beyond to infinity. And who cares that we're just kind of like permanently retarded, right? Mentally, as a species.
Well, yeah, I think that's like one of the subsequent, or like probably one of the final steps in like the little analogy I was talking about with the circle before. Like the individual dots of human capacity will like shrink to basically nothing. Yet like the big circle of technology that can do stuff will expand and expand and expand, far greater than like anything that we've necessarily seen. Yeah, I mean, the AI one is pretty, yeah, that's a good point, because we have to communicate to it through words. And so I think Elon Musk wants us to be able to communicate through it without words, just like direct integration. We'll see. I mean, like, I'm sure developments will happen. Obviously, it's very primitive at this point, but I think most people, and I actually posted about this on Instagram the other day. I saw someone else was talking about Chat GPT, and I like shared a little story about it. I think if you're not an entrepreneur, or if you don't work in an industry that requires your like personality, like someone who's like not the type of salespeople who just cold email all day, but like you work in a boutique and people come to you because they like talking to you, you know, and they want to have friendly banter, and like, you know a lot about like the domain, but you're also friendly. Like, I think that type of occupation is safe. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're safe. But beyond that, ultimately, very few things are safe. Very few careers are safe, I think. If you do a physical labor thing, ironically enough, like especially like a skilled labor thing, like being an electrician or a plumber or something, you're much safer for much longer than most of the white collar workers. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be very disruptive.
Yeah, because the question with the AI is like, what are we going to do with all those unemployed people? And Elon says universal basic income is his best idea, but that seems to come with its own problems.
Right. It's like, well, okay, fine, you pay them, but then what? What are they going to do? Sit and watch TV? I mean, ultimately, in such a world, like when people have like a lack of meaning in life, then I suppose they'll just like die off, right? Because like people in a world devoid of purpose, like will fail to reproduce in like the same way. So there's a fun fact about elephants. Elephants are like one of the smartest animals, as you may know. So like when people were first going to Africa and putting things in zoos and whatever, they tried putting elephants in zoos and bringing them back to Europe and the US. But like literally for like 100, 150 or whatever, so many years, every zookeeper failed to get an elephant to breed in captivity. They would go to Africa, get an elephant, bring it back, show it around. And even if they had elephants, like a male and a female, whatever, like they would not mate and successfully breed. And it took like a long time. I don't actually know how they figured it out. But I think how I read this story is that like elephants are smart. They understood the futility of their existence in like basically a zoo. And they like realized that it would be like silly to bring new life into the world under such conditions. And I think people in human zoos will show or exhibit similar tendencies, which, whether it's good or bad, people can decide for themselves. But I think that's certainly where we're heading.
That's a really interesting point I haven't thought about. Or they could be turn into roving gangs where, since they have no meaning, they're just like, let's have fun taking over regions, right?
Yeah, well, I think if the infrastructure is strong enough, then like they're unable to do that successfully because like any sort of law enforcement that actually wants to put a stop to it would very easily be able to do so. Um, that's another good point though about the whole circle expanding and like the technology getting bigger and the human capacity getting smaller. Like that is a fundamentally weak position, despite the fact that you may be able to achieve more because of the body of technology. It's fundamentally weak position because the system is increasingly fragile as it gets larger, and because you rely on it to do so much. It's like a double-edged sword. You rely on it to do more and more and more and more, and as it does more and more and more and more, it becomes more fragile and therefore susceptible to like systemic risk. And so, like, imagine so much of the world and like life is outsourced to some sort of AI type thing. Well, like what happens if the power goes out? Right? Like 50 years ago, like our parents' generation or whatever, 100 years ago, great grandparents, they might not even have electricity. And if they did and the power went out, they were like, oh, okay, business as usual. Let me go out to my outhouse, my backyard and go pee in the dark. And like, let me light my candles. Nowadays, people lose electricity and it's like the phones start dying. And then you're like, well, how do I eat? How do I pay my bills? Right? How do I do anything? So like, imagine just an even more technologically dependent world. Like what happens when these fundamental things occur? Like the power goes out, there's a storm, there's solar wind, there's an earthquake, who the hell knows what? Because you outsource more and more and more of the functions of your life and society's life to this piece of technology. If that technology should fail for whatever reason, like it's catastrophically terrible. And even worse, because the skill of the human, like little dots have gotten so small, they've shrunk. The skill and capacities of individuals have atrophied so much. In such a world, when the big circle of competence is gone, now what? Can you chop firewood? Do you even know how to wield an axe? Do you know what trees are good to burn? Like, you can go from there.
Yeah. Being fully off grid here, every once in a while, I'll have a hiccup in my system and I'm working on learning how to fix it myself.
Right.
But a couple of weeks ago, I was on the phone with the customer service that makes my inverters and charge controllers, stuff that connects my solar panels to charge my batteries. And my generator wasn't charging my batteries, and it was a freak out moment. Lo and behold, the breaker just flipped. And so all I had to do was flip back on the breaker, which is a good lesson. And like, okay, start simple and then work to more complicated.
Yeah. I mean, every domain of technology has a similar sort of progression, like cars, like mechanics, like modern handy homeowners it's very hard for them to work on like a contemporary gasoline automobile just because like things are so compact. Most of the things are electronic control. There's computers, systems everywhere. But like, your good old 1956, like Ford Mustang, like you could wrench on that thing all day. I mean, the same is true with electronics too. Like back in the day, like you could literally fix a circuit breaker. Like you can go in there and solder wires and replace a little breaker and like, you can see it. But like when you start talking about like modern digital electronics with like semiconductors, silicon chips, whatever, like in your phone, if something mechanically breaks, like, can you fix it? Like, absolutely not. And so, I mean, especially if you're off grid, like I would encourage you to for sure have like as less digital electronic equipment as possible. The more analog stuff, the older fashioned it is, the more easy it would be for you to fix in times of like actually needing to. That's an interesting lesson.
Yeah, I grew up with my dad fixing. So I grew up with like we had the first PCs and stuff, and my dad could essentially program. And whenever me or my older brother's computer would get the black screen of death, if anyone remembers that, and like a crazy matrix looking, readout, we'd yell for him, and then he'd come and, half an hour later, he's typing away, doing crazy stuff, and it's fixed. But I think I've heard that's one of the most the most in demand jobs lately is like programmers and.
Some programmers. I used to be a software engineer. Until I quit my job to go work at Masa full time. But certain types of programmers are in demand because they have more sort of like life-saving skills than others. Like changing colors on like button colors on a website is like not that helpful. But the type of people who can do what you're talking about, like this is called like machine language or machine code, like writing the software that the actual computer like ingests and reads, like that is very difficult. That is very necessary and will basically always be necessary.
Is that
but
like C++ or beyond that? Or?
Oh, it's way beyond C++. C++ is like it's like low level or high level depending on which direction you're measuring levels in. But it's like C++ is read by some other software that then turns it into code that the machine understands. So that is like that's sort of the hierarchy, right? There's the bare metal, like the hardware, and then you have like machine code on top of that, and then you have something like C++ on top of that. And then above that, it's just other software being interpreted by other software. So like when most people write a website, you're not writing like to the computer itself. You're writing to some other software for that software to understand, to speak to some other software, and maybe 2 or 3 more layers of software before a computer is actually like the mechanical switches are actually talked to. There's many layers of abstraction. And so basically the deeper down you go, the closer to the hardware you are, the more crucial and like necessary and everything it is. But at the same time, the less total need for that stuff is, because once you write it once, it applies to every computer, like once it's in a Mac, like all Macs have it. And then software that talks to the other software goes on top of that. And then there's need for like more app developers and whatnot, right? So it's like, as you go up the scale, people individually are less important, but in total, you need more of them. And so then you have, the million people that like at least claim to know how to put a website together. That's like probably the highest level thing.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Wow. Yeah. I took a C++ class in like my senior year of high school. Nice. And it was way over my head and I didn't enjoy it. I had no idea what I was doing and I was just winging it.
Yeah, it looks like gibberish. It's very hard to read. And most people who like do software wouldn't do C++, especially nowadays. Like even because like when you went that was like what 15, 20 years ago?
That was 2004. No, that was 2005. Yeah.
Okay, it's like 15 years ago. Yeah, I mean the world's technology was a very different place in 2005. Very different place. So, like Facebook was like barely even a thing.
Yeah, we were playing that my teacher was pretty cool. I'm still friends with him. We were playing not Warcraft, but it was the one with the Borg, that game. Do you remember that game where you send alien troops? It was like a Warcraft type game.
Interesting. I was never allowed to have video games as a kid.
Wow.
My mom vehemently denied that privilege to me, which of course I hated at the time, but in retrospect was like absolutely amazing of her to do. But so I would like, oh my God, I would like go to friends' houses and like they would have video games and they would have junk food, which like we never had also. Like we never had, let's say like the type of food I eat now. We never had like lamb head stew and like lamb testicles, but we did have like no, Cheez-Its or Doritos or anything like that. So I would go to my friends' houses and like I would binge play video games because I wasn't allowed any, and like eat their Cheez-Its and like candy until I like wanted to puke. And then I would come home the next day and feel terrible. But yeah, that was a big part of my childhood, sneaking video games and junk food.
That's hilarious. So we have a similarity there, but I had no breaks from the video games. But yeah, it's Cheez-Its, Wheat Thins.
Yeah.
Goldfish. Those were my top 3. Yeah.
Oreos are good. Fun fact, Oreo cream has been vegan for like decades.
Wow.
And it's like cream, but nope.
That sounds like a bad thing because we're getting less nutrition.
It's a terrible thing. But yeah, there's a fun, there's a lot of reasons why packaged food like does not use animal products, which is like things that I learned, in my conversations with like manufacturers, trying to get them to make masa, then ultimately realizing like, hey, we have to do it ourselves. There's like this sort of political, like veganism is good, animals bad kind of thing. But there's a lot of like sort of regulatory and like other business concerns that like prevent manufacturers for like putting animal products in their foods. For example, whenever you have meat in your food of any sort, it's not regulated by the FDA. The FDA does like the nutrition labels and the ingredients and all that stuff. Once you have meat products in your food, it falls under the jurisdiction of the USDA. And so meat products have to be made in a USDA approved and inspected facility. And that is much more rigorous and much harder because people have this like fear about the bacteria with meat and stuff, which is like ostensibly unfounded because like the largest scale foodborne illness outbreaks of like recent memory have like all been plants, lettuce and chipotle. The most deadly outbreak was like, I think in the 70s or 80s. And it was like cantaloupes from New Mexico. And like they killed like 30 people. And so regardless, the way the regulatory system works is that like you have to put up with a lot more sort of compliance stuff if you want to make meat products, which naturally makes things more expensive and more difficult. So if you wanted to use a meat ingredient, you may be encouraged to otherwise not do so. Another thing, of course, is like the sort of public health doctrine, but a lot of the certifications as well change people's desire or, tolerance for making meat products. So if something is, so obviously like kosher certified foods and halal certified foods have to have meat that's like processed in a certain way that's like kosher or halal. But most meat is not actually. So if you have a facility that makes kosher or halal items, and like if you wanted to introduce an animal product into that facility, it would have to also be kosher certified, which is exceedingly rare actually. And most packaged foods are certified in those ways. So there's another like sort of certification reason that like makes it harder to have animal products in your food, which is interesting.
Wow. I remember the thing that turned me vegan years ago was that documentary Earthlings by Joaquin Phoenix, kind of a sketchy character like a lot of the actors.
Classic.
But that hit me, and I remember there was a whole part about kosher and halal being much more cruel. That was the message of the documentary than like
interesting.
Because it was like a slow, drawn out death. And I have no idea now. I haven't looked into it. I probably eat factory farm meat, once or twice a year, and it's at airports, and I rarely travel, basically. So
the kosher halal slaughter process, I'm pretty sure it comes down to the slaughter itself. It has little to do with how the animal's raised outside of that. But I believe the way they do it is they like slit the throat of the animal, and it bleeds out. But like 99% of the blood has to like drain out before they start processing it and whatever. Because there's like a prohibition against like eating blood. So they do it without knocking the animal unconscious. And so what happens, and what the vegan documentary will show, is that the animal's like writhing on the floor, blood squirting out everywhere. But of course, the contention is that like once you cut that artery in the neck, the brain loses blood flow almost instantly, and therefore the brain is dead. And so while the body of the animal is like spasming around and it looks like it's in pain to the average, young Netflix viewer, and so like, oh my God, this is so cruel, it actually does not necessarily cause the animal a ton of pain. However, in non-kosher slaughter, the way it's done is that like the animal, they have like this little gun that like, it's not like a bullet, but like it's like a hammer basically. And it knocks the animal unconscious or even kills it with like a concussive force to like the back of the head. It's like someone took a baseball bat and hit you in the back of the head really hard. And then they like cut it up and drain the blood and whatever. So that's like the distinction in the slaughter. And obviously like it's much more mechanistic and easy to slaughter the non-kosher method, which is why meat is like, there's much more of it available. But yeah, I think as far as the pain the animal experiences in both cases, from what I understand, is similar, although in one instance it just looks a lot worse.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like slaughtering chickens. I haven't done it yet, but I'm friends with people up here, that you put the chicken in a cone, carry it over, and they've all said it's pretty calm, and then you slit his throat when it's upside down on the cone. But if you, do it like on a wood block, chop its head off between two nails, another method, or shoot it, which seems like the most humane method. I've heard they just run around for like 5-10
Yeah.
minutes and it looks horrendous.
Blood gets everywhere,
Right.
squirting out of the neck. Yeah. The common thing, I've worked in a chicken farm before, and we did chicken slaughtering, and that was the method they did as well. The interesting thing that farmer did, which I haven't necessarily heard about being ubiquitous, but what he did is that he would like get the knife. He wouldn't like slit the throat. He would like kind of poke the knife through the middle of the neck, piercing the blood vessel, but not the nerve. So like he would make a point to like not go around the nerve and just poke the blood vessel, and it's upside down. So that means because the heart was still connected to the brain, the heart would keep beating because there was the nerve connection there. And while it was beating, it would beat out. It would basically pump the blood out because there's a hole and it's upside down. So the heart would beat all the blood out, and then the blood would drain much more of the blood would drain than it would if you just like chopped the head off completely. And that, according to him, allowed the meat to be much more tender and much better, which I think that's the same contention for like kosher meat as well, because that's like slightly less or like more of the blood is gone. It's like preserves better or something. So that was interesting with the chickens.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I've camped unknowingly right next to a chicken processing plant, and the sound of them screaming started at like 1 or 2 a.m. and it was pretty intense. It went on for like 20 or 30 minutes, and I was like vegetarian at the time. I'm like, should I go back to vegan? It's keeping goats and seeing how you keep like a goat pregnant, and if you have a buck, they usually either drown it or kill it. I gave mine away because there's no use. You generally don't want more than one buck. There's debate on that, but it's prison style rape generally, and some people are just like whatever. But I don't like that. So, but yeah, it's just nature. Our reality is pretty harsh. I mean, the way that it's set up, it's pretty intense.
Kill or be killed.
Right.
It's pretty terrifying. I'm a big fan of the Nature is Metal Instagram account. Have you seen that one?
I have.
Yeah, with like all nature doing like things that human morality might consider cruel, and it's like it's just nature doing nature. It's like it is what it is. But yeah, the meat thing. After working on the chicken farm, I didn't consider going vegan, but I definitely started eating a lot less chicken after that. But not for the reason people might think. Which is that like I was traumatized by like pulling chicken guts out of carcasses all day, which I mean is what it is. The thing that did it for me was that the chickens that are often raised for meat are like a certain breed of chicken that like is basically very decrepit is how I would call it. So like obviously everything is GMO'd, even if it's not in a lab, it's like selectively bred to like have certain features. And so meat chickens since like the 50s have been bred to just have like massive, massive breasts because the breasts are the most valuable per pound. And like chicken legs, of course, the lower part of the leg is not eaten, right? Chicken feet. And so the feet have been bred to be small. The breasts have been bred to be huge. So the chickens basically can't walk. Like they can kind of like hobble around. And so these were pasture raised chickens, right? It was like an upside down sort of U-shaped fence enclosure. And there was grass and they would throw the seeds around and the chickens would like hobble around inside that enclosure. And they would move a few times a day. As far as like raising chickens for meat, this is like one of the best farms that like exists, right? By most people's standards of the chicken available to them, this is like far superior. And yet the chickens were in such like a sorry state. And like what's even worse, I think, is that because feathers are useless for chickens, the chickens have also been bred to have like smaller feather volume. So like in the 7 weeks at which they were killed, most of them didn't have full feather coverage. And they were just like these half bald, like limping, like big breasted little white blobs like hobbling around the field until they were killed. And it was just like a very pathetic thing. Because if you think about like the nature of carnivory, it's like the strength of the thing I eat then becomes my strength. And so if like you're eating this frail, sickly little bird, then like you're going to turn into a frail, sickly little animal. So it's like you want to eat like, a fully grown, like old, like bison or like an old, like an old, like a sheep or something. And it's like, the fat in such an animal is much more nutrient dense. Like everything about it is like stronger and healthier. So like that's kind of what we should be eating. And so I just stopped eating chicken mostly after that.
Have you heard? I was at a conference years ago, and I've had a lot of interesting conversations. And your Ayurvedic type, forget there's a name for it, like Kapha, Pitta, or Vata. Supposedly, I'm like Pitta Vata combo, but
Okay.
someone at a health conference told me you need to be eating more red meat and less chicken. But some people can actually thrive eating more chicken than like bison and beef. Have you heard that theory?
I mean, I think it makes sense, right? Like the diversity in like the human genome is quite absurd. I mean, chickens come from Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, basically. The Southeast Asian jungle fowl is its ancestor, and it came to Europe by way of Greece, like sometime like 3,000 or so years ago. It's not really a native food to people from, like, say, Northern Europe, for example. And so it's quite possible that people from that area would not do well with as much chicken. But if you lived in a sort of jungly kind of climate, where in general birds like the warm weather, right, migrate south for the winter, it makes sense that you might encounter more bird style meat, and that might be better for you. So, I mean, all that stuff I think is valid. So I think there's a lot to be learned in like informing how we should eat and like live based on our ancestry. Of course, at the end of the day, you still have to take ultimate recourse to like your personal experience. And so if like the Ayurvedic people tell you to eat a lot of chicken because that's your type, and then you eat a lot of chicken and you feel terrible, well, you should probably not listen to them.
Yeah, I think they were talking about it more in the energetic sense. And I remember when I broke it was like 8 or 9 years of plant-based years ago with bison and beef. It was like immediate, instant increase in total body strength. So where I still surprise my friends when I tell them the story where I did a stand-up ab roller from standing position, nose to ground, and back up. And I did 2 in a row. And my bodybuilder friends in the living room were like looking at me like I took a drug or something.
You basically did, yeah.
Right. But I don't think it was just the amino acids intuitively. I feel like it was the bison and the beef just finally eating strength versus just tofu, which I was kind of raised on tofu and beans.
Oh my God. You're raised on tofu.
Well, I mean, I was eating like I was eating mostly chicken growing up. I didn't eat steaks.
So chicken only became the most consumed meat in the US in 2005. Until then, it was beef.
Wow.
And like it continues to grow and beef continues to shrink, which is like terrible. Because chicken is like such a useless meat. I mean, not useless, but like from a nutrient and like a nutrient content standpoint, it's like everything that you want, you get more of in like ruminant animals, beef, lamb, bison, deer, elk, whatever. And so also the way chickens are fed, like, cause the thing with their stomachs, like they're monogastric animals. So like if they eat PUFAs, their fat gets full of PUFAs, whereas even corn-fed cows will still have a higher saturated fat content in their fat. Honestly, a lot of chicken. So like I have this thing that happens to me when I eat a lot of PUFAs. My dad calls this feeling sour stomach. I don't know if this is like a real term. But it's basically like after eating maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's like things feel like they're just sitting in my stomach. And it's like, I feel thirsty, but if I drink water, it'll make it worse. And it's like not nauseous. And it's like kind of heartburny. And it's like, it's a very uncomfortable spot. For me, the 2 things that help with dealing with this are taking ginger root, because that like activates digestive juices and pushes things out. As well as tobacco actually helps like stimulate my digestion in such a state. But that's a separate conversation. Point is, I get this feeling whenever I eat a lot of PUFAs, whether it's like accidentally some like fried food or thing at a restaurant, but it happens a ton when I eat chicken and pork. Or I don't eat a ton of chicken and pork now for this reason, but I can only presume it's because there's so much PUFA in average chicken and pork because of the way they're raised. So I tend to stay away from those types of meats for that reason as well.
That's awesome that tobacco helps your stomach. I was going to say my remedy for that is a cigar and some digestive enzymes.
Yeah, there you go. So that's so cool. I was not under the impression that like digestive stimulation was like a universally recognized benefit of tobacco, but like you say it is. I've experienced it. Like, do you know more about that?
I have a few books here in my huge bookshelf that I need to revisit on like ancestral like uses of tobacco.
Uh,
Because most of the books out there on tobacco is, it's like it's going to kill you. Smoking is bad. I think it's like 5% or less of tobacco books speak of its benefits.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I think I remember reading in one they used to do like tobacco enemas and from, and horn contraptions, all sorts of. I mean, it was used in literally every way. Years ago, I made the paste Ambil that, and I mixed. So basically, I grew in a pyramid tobacco, Nicotiana rustica, like 6 small potted plants under a pyramid under full sun. And then I harvested them. I didn't dry them correctly. I just cooked them in water on the stovetop, boiled the water, and then put lemon juice. Just a very crude method, lemon juice, and then cacao paste, and then strained it, and then added some shilajit paste once it was like semi-cool. And then
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, my friend took some. He's like, I feel like I meditated for 20 minutes. Like,
And so,
yeah,
so you ate the concoction.
yeah, but it's like, it was like the tip of a chopstick kind of amount because it's,
Okay.
it's deadly. So it's kind of scary. But yeah, tobacco is so amazing. I mean, it's so interesting that cannabis has become like the popular drug, and now tobacco is has been getting stigmatized.
It should be the opposite.
Right. I mean, cannabis is it's a good painkiller, first aid, but to me, it's like biggest benefit, whereas tobacco is just so much better.
Yeah. Like so many more uses. I remember, and so I remember hearing you talk about the antiparasitic effects of it. And that was the first time I heard it. I thought about that. And then when I heard it, it connected me to something that happened in high school. So in the house I grew up, like when I was in high school, we had like a sort of stink bug infestation. And they would be all along the outside walls of the house. And I would come home from school and I greatly enjoy killing bugs. So I would like take a broomstick and just like smash them against like the side of the wall, like hit them down or whatever. Cause you can do it outside because they can stink up the thing and it doesn't matter because it's outdoors. But there would be ones that were too high up for me to reach. And I'd be like, damn it, how do I get those? Like, damn invaders. And so I did a little bit of research and I found that if you like on the internet, basically you make a tobacco tea, essentially. Similar to what you said, you boil tobacco, and if you get bugs coated in tobacco tea, they die because like animals with like an exoskeleton or whatever, like they're susceptible to this. So like my mom never smoked a cigarette or anything in her entire life. She's a very puritanical woman. I had her go as a high schooler, like buy me like chewing tobacco at the store. She's like, I've never done this in my entire life. Come home, I boil it, I make a tea, I let it cool, I put it in like an old super soaker water gun that I had, and I like pumped it up and like went out and started shooting the stink bugs on the outside of the house, and they just dropped like dead. They would like fall to the ground, like wriggle a little bit for like 10 seconds and then like die. And I was like, I remember that when I saw you talking about the antiparasitic effects of tobacco, and I was like, this is so real. Like this actually does this. Like all the bugs died. It was very effective. And of course it's like natural. I mean, I'm sure the chewing tobacco had some additives or whatever, but if you made it with like natural tobacco, it's like you grow it in your yard. Now you have like a pest control,
You probably just changed my year because I have a stink bug problem in this house. And I was like, between demoing it, I was literally considering demolishing this house with a wrecking ball because there's not a day that's gone by I haven't killed a bug. It's like flies.
Too many holes in it.
They're getting in the insulation or something. So I'm looking into like retrofoam where they could literally drill in the sidewall or the side of the house. They drill like 2 small holes and they pump in foam.
Fill it up with foam,
and it'll push out the insulation, kind of fill in. I think they're getting in everywhere, but I'm totally going to try that. I'm going to do the super soaker. I'm going to make it a tobacco tea if I can't get a hold of a company here.
Wait, that's hilarious. Because so in the wintertime that I always find the stink bugs at home, like inside, because I guess it's too cold for them. But I guess when the springtime happens, they'll be on the outside of your house. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can hotbox the whole place with your cigar. They'll just fall off the ceiling.
I'm going to try everything. no, I think that's great. That's a really good tip. Yeah, because I think a lot of people. I did hours of research on this stink bug thing, and there's no attractant. There's not like you can't put up like that little hanging fly thing where they go in and they get trapped. There's nothing like that for them.
They're so annoying. It's like they're quiet until they just like show up on your keyboard. Like they like buzz around. I hate that. Like of all the bugs, those frustrate me among the most. But yeah, it's very weird to think like, so marijuana is estrogenic, right? It's the same family as hops, which like has a ton of in beer, which is also estrogenic. And so we got beer, we got weed, which is very common and very popular, highly estrogenic products. And yet we have tobacco, which is of course the opposite, right? The aromatase inhibitor, pro-testosterone. And so it's like all of a sudden, like the entire culture, which like everyone was like completely addicted to tobacco, like at some point in the not too distant past, like basically 100% of Americans, probably through the 80s were like completely addicted to tobacco. And all of a sudden it's like approaching the opposite, where like very few people smoke and almost everyone smokes weed. And it's like, did we really get a good trade-off here? Because I'm thinking like, okay, fine. The argument for tobacco smoking is like inhaling particulate fumes and carbon monoxide into your lungs are probably not great. Sure. But if that's the case, then you do the same thing when you smoke weed, right? You still have burnt plant matter. You still have carbon monoxide. It's the same stuff. So it's like how, if the act of smoking itself is bad, which I'm obviously perfectly open to, then like, why is it the case that like tobacco is bad, but weed is good? They should either both be bad or we should not care and they should be both good. Very, very strange, in my opinion.
Yeah. I've read cannabis articles, pro cannabis articles, where they say it's not the same. And here's this study to prove it. I think smoking is, as a responsible podcast host here, I'm just going to say I'm not endorsing you go out and get on cigars or Nat Sherman cigarette. Oh, I think that company sold. That's the cigarettes I used to chic smoke, but when I'm on the go. But I'm kind of creating like a smoking protocol, whether someone's smoking anything. But from my research, ascorbic acid, vitamin E, so vitamin C and vitamin E, mitigate the oxidative stress from smoking. And there's studies on this. I mean, smokers have a higher vitamin C need. And then if you want to go even further, pair that with after you smoke, go in a salt chamber, which you could buy handheld ones, or you can get a pop-up tent or whatever. That's a little more expensive, but I do that every time after I smoke a cigar. I did it last night, and I just sit in there and I breathe the dry salt micron particles for like 5 minutes. Immediate reset. After you smoke a cigar, you kind of have like that feeling in your throat and mouth, completely gone with the salt. It's really interesting.
So you breathe like it's like salt dust, and like that's fine for everything. Interesting.
I had a whole show on it. Yeah, I interviewed Salt Chamber founder. Yeah, it's blown my mind how effective that is. I think I don't know, maybe it's a solution for the geoengineering spraying. I mean, it's just like this therapy that I hadn't thought of until recently.
Well, so what's the pitch? Like, is it like it's antioxidant? It's like antimicrobial, like it's an energy boosting? Like how does it work?
It pulls water into it. So it'll pull, so the dry salt will pull in pollutants that basically, that are attached.
It's like a sauna for your, whatever they call it, follicular, whatever the things in your lungs, because like osmosis will pull. Interesting. Huh. I mean, if there's a handheld version, I'd be open to trying that. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I was reading something about how cigarette smokers like much higher levels of like endogenous glutathione than people who are not smokers. And so like that actually is like protective in areas where there's high degrees of air pollution. Like one of the things they saw was like coal miners who like work with the coal dust and all this stuff. Or people who live in polluted cities, I think was another study. The people who were smokers like did better off in those environments because their lungs were producing more of this like very powerful antioxidant.
Makes sense. Yeah. And it supports mitochondrial function. Like I have some nicotine gum that I was sent, I think by Lucy company or something. And I've tried nicotine patches. I've tried just supplementing nicotine. I prefer to just get the real thing in tobacco. I feel more of a benefit from it. The real thing is usually preferable in my opinion. Because like there's so many other like things that you don't know what's going along with it, right? Like we think it's the nicotine,
but is it the nicotine that does the glutathione, or is there some like of the other million chemicals, probably which none have been even discovered or named in a tobacco plant, causing it? Like you never know. It's same thing with like supplementing like synthetic. I mean, we talk about this with like vitamin E, right? You try to have mixed tocopherols and all this stuff as opposed to just like alpha tocopherol or whatever. It's like there's so many more things. I'm sure there's more vitamin E like associated molecules than just the tocopherols and the tocotrienols or whatever that have an effect. But like we don't know when we do the artificial thing. But yeah, no, the tobacco is really that's just so wild to me. I have one more thing to say about this. So like we're talking about seed oils and oxidative stress, right? Seed oils have been consumed like since the 50s, but really since the 70s when they started kind of taking off. Oxidative stress is one of the major things they do that's a problem. Glutathione is independently like talked about in the sort of seed oil literature as like one of the things that you should take to like, antioxidate yourself from the toxic effects of seed oils. So like, and then something I've noticed is that like people started getting really obese and much more sick only recently. Like even in the 90s when everyone was like eating a lot of seed oils still, like people still looked fine. Like you look at a picture of the beach in the 90s, like, it's fine. Obesity really started taking off in the 2000s. And it's interesting to think that like this is sort of the same time when like people stopped smoking cigarettes. So I'm kind of wondering, like, was the massive amount of like glutathione that people were like basically producing because of their like addiction to tobacco, which I'm not saying is good, by the way, was the massive amount of like glutathione in their bodies contributing to the fact that like they were suppressing the more toxic effects of seed oil consumption. And then only once people stopped smoking en masse did the real full toxic effects of seed oils like kind of run unchecked. And then we see all the health effects that we have. So basically the thesis is that like cigarette smoking was protective against some of the worst effects of seed oils for much of the 20th century.
Yeah. And when was cannabis legalized? Because I
past
worked
10 years.
Right. And that kind of goes along with the estrogenic effect of seed oils, right? You see stacked estrogen.
Right. And like obesogenic effects, of course. So like, you add cannabis on top of seed oils, take away the nicotine, take away the glutathione, take away the aromatase inhibition. And then
the stoners are probably sitting on the couch eating seed oil chips too.
Eating seed oil chips. maybe that's another niche to target for Masa. Have your munchies without the seed oils. That's interesting.
You need to make the wrapping on the Masa chips like 3D glasses friendly or something.
turn the logo into like a little leaf behind it. So that's interesting about the tobacco. I mean, I think about the obesity thing. I think we were talking about this the other day about like this sort of skinny fat thing, and then I was like talking about with my personal trainer earlier today, just like shooting the shit about it. I think the leanest I've ever been personally was when I was on more or less a caloric deficit because I had to cook for myself and therefore didn't really eat. Because whenever I have to cook for myself, it's like I would rather work than eat, or rather work than cook. So unless food is like put in front of me, I won't really eat it. So yeah, I was cooking for myself, probably eating 3 small meals a day. I was mostly keto with a little bit of fruit, and like some potatoes only at dinner. And it was during the summer. I had like 7 months of sun exposure because I lived in Florida during the winter and then I moved to New York for the summer. And I think that was the leanest I've personally ever been. And so I think like the takeaways there are probably a lot of sun and minimal starch, and like some sort of caloric deficit would be the contributing factors.
Wow. Yeah. I've been down this rabbit hole the last few days, and that's interesting. Caloric deficit. Yeah. Cause I've been playing with the time restricted feeding, which Walter Longo and Rhonda Patrick talk about a lot, and Dominic D'Agostino. I mean, there's a whole group of people that are talking about time restricted feeding, but the idea is to eat the same amount of calories in a small window of time.
Right.
But I've definitely, the last 3 years I've been playing with refined sugar, C&H in my goat milk. I did that almost every day for the last, 2 to 3 years, with some breaks in there. And I haven't seen my abs pop like they have 4 years ago when I was, not eating any refined sugar at all.
That makes sense.
And really, skipping meals. So it's kind of counter to my belief system the last several years, because I was like, skipping meals is evil. it's going to slow your metabolism. It's going to wreck your thyroid, blah, blah, blah. And I think, like we've been talking about, like going off experience is the king, to go by.
I think, well, there's a lot of confusing factors that like make it hard to pin down. Like, I think one big thing, like a really, really big thing is the weather. Mm-hmm. Like when it's cold, you should be fat, like not obese, but like you should be a little, like have a little extra, right? Like I'm very lean. And when I go out in the cold, like we talked about this before, I get cold. I'm like freezing. And it's like I'm wearing a coat, whatever. And I'm still like shivering because like I have probably 12% body fat, 10 to 12% body fat. And so that's cold. So if I'm in a cold climate, my body will inherently want me to be thicker. And if you look at sort of the phenotypes of people who live in cold climates, of course, Mongols, Nordic Europeans, Eskimos, whatever, they're thick people, right? Like, have you ever seen like Thor Bjornsson, like the strongest man in the world, whatever, like the Icelandic dude? Like, obviously he's incredibly strong and obviously he's incredibly fit, but like you don't see his abs, right? You don't even see that many veins popping out of his arms. He's like huge, right? Because he needs like that phenotype needs a lot of fat to like basically. So the thing, one of the reasons for this is that the rounder you are, like the thicker you are, the smaller your surface area to volume ratio is. And because humans radiate heat through our skin, if the surface area to volume ratio is smaller, then we radiate less heat. And so if you're in a cold climate, you want to have that smaller ratio to preserve your body heat because it's like negative 20 degrees outside, which is one of the reasons why you see that sort of phenotype among like the Icelandic, Norwegian, whatever type of people. So if you're like in Idaho, which is, pretty damn cold, like it may be hard to get super shredded and it may not even be desirable, I don't know, you might have to like sauna a lot and use like a ton of red light therapy and like convince your body that it's like really warm out for it to feel like it's safe to lose the fat.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. I mean, maybe it's like a cyclical thing where the eating window can be smaller in warmer temperatures and then longer in the winter temperatures as you go into like that hibernation.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like and our desires about like our body fat percentage and what we want out of it, like may conflict with what like nature actually wants out of our body. Like I talk about this, I wrote a little article about this a few weeks ago, like the proper attitude to have toward winter. A lot of the people like health biohacker people are like peak performance out of my body, like 24/7, right? But it's like your body, like the universe is cyclical. Your body and your health naturally will also be cyclical. Unless you're the type of person who lives in like an equatorial climate, which is like always warm. And moreover, you evolved and your ancestors evolved in such a climate. Like cyclicality is like built into your nature. Like the leaves in the trees die and fall off. Bears go and hibernate, like birds go south. Like animals do a lot less in the winter because just surviving alone is like very difficult. And so obviously we have, artificial heat and artificial light and cars and snowshoes and winter coats and whatnot. So you don't experience the effects as much, but we still do. So it's like if people think that they're going to get the same sort of performance out of their bodies and their brains during the winter as they will during the summer, it's like it's not a reasonable expectation to have on like a cyclical reality that like mandates basically that winter is the sort of time of like rest and recovery. It's almost like winter is the time. It's like on the yearly cycle, winter is like midnight. It's like sleep time, rest and recover. And so, I mean, I think if people really want to maintain sort of peak performance, body and mind or whatever in the wintertime, they should go move to Miami, go move to Costa Rica, right? But then at the same time, you do that. And then like, what else are you sacrificing? As you know, if you don't sleep for like 2 days straight, like without being able to recover, like your body's going to have problems. So it's like, if you want to try and go to a warm place and like, hide from the winter, well, when are you getting that like few months of like rest and relaxation to prepare you for the next year? Maybe that's stressful, or maybe your performance, like total output and capacity will decrease. And if you look at like sort of economic productivity as like maybe a measure of like mental competence and like physical health, most of the economic productivity in the US comes from like cities in like northern latitudes. New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, DC. And so it's like, maybe, yeah, you can go and spend your entire life in like perpetual summer in Miami, but then at the same time, like the total, like you will have a higher low, but maybe you'll have a lower high, you know? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I guess my two thoughts on you know, like you said, being more shredded is not necessarily for vanity, although that's like a side benefit, you know, to look good for your woman. But it's interesting, the longevity studies I've looked at, just like every other study, one says lower body fat percentage increases lifespan and quality of life, and then another study says, you know, having a little more body fat helps with longevity. But also, I mean, my mind just goes to fats being a storage for fat soluble toxins.
Of course,
you know,
yeah.
So the less storage capacity you have for like metals and stuff, probably the better. But maybe there's some nuance there to where when you do the spring cleaning, you burn fat and get shredded for the summer, maybe those come out, and that's why you do.
Well, I've also thought like, the sweating, like the sauna helps because like, so like, if you get rid of your body fat, you have less capacity to store fat soluble toxins, but at the same time, maybe you're not losing the body fat because there are fat soluble toxins there, and like your body doesn't want them to come out. Right. So like, I think this is an underappreciated role in fat. And of course, glad you mentioned this, but like people think it's like, oh, excess energy, whatever. But it's like, no, like you're fat, you're walking around with like pounds of toxic, like Superfund site, like EPA danger, like garbage. And your body has decided that the best way to protect you from it is to like put it in a relatively inert, safe place in your fat, which is like not ideal, but it's better than having it float around your blood. It's better than sending it up to your brain. So if you're trying to like burn fat, right? Like a lot of people struggle with weight loss, I think, not because it's necessarily a calorie or metabolism issue, but because the body is like literally like saying like, why do you want to like dump this toxic garbage in our blood? If I burn this fat, you know, you're getting mercury poisoning. You know, I don't want mercury poisoning, so I'll do whatever I can to not have to burn this fat, even if it means lowering metabolism, whatever. So I think most fat loss protocols are not accompanied by a similar or enough attention spent toward also detoxing at the same time. And so I think as far as I know, like maybe you know probably more about detox stuff than I do, but like saunas are like the thing that I would go to. But like, you know, there's charcoal, there's zeolite. I don't know what else detox stuff that you would do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some mineral balancing people are anti-herbs. I'm a big fan of herbs. I mean, I've been drinking teas since my raw vegan days. And my current experiment that I did 4 to 5 years ago, pretty heavily for 6 months, was basically living on teas for 23. I mean, it's extreme, not recommending this, but living on, you know, do caffeine, do stevia, and then all these different teas, rooibos, hibiscus, white tea, roasted tea necks I did this morning, you know, anything, chamomile. There's a million teas you can do, but each different tea and herbs in them benefit the kidneys and the liver and the different organs, glands in different ways. So you could actually like facilitate the clearing process while your body is breaking and the toxins are getting released from your fat cells into your bloodstream. So it to me, I kind of go off mental clarity too. And if my memory and concentration and everything is going up, then I'm like, oh, I'm probably going in the right direction.
So the herbs, so like obviously there's a lot of specificity in there, but like in general, like herbs would be your go-to like detoxification sort of choice.
Plus a sauna. Yeah.
The sauna.
The wood is all buried. I didn't plan well enough, but I have a wood burning barrel sauna with the rocks, the old style. And I haven't used it in a month or two just because I didn't plan ahead with keeping the wood out of the snow. So now it's just under.
Oh, so you ran out of wood.
Correct.
Okay. Minor detail. I wonder if herbs. Yeah, I've never. There's a lot of people talk about herbal medicine. It's like very complicated, and it's not like I think there's a lot of potential there, but it's also like I don't know. I personally teas. I never really like drinking that much liquid, and it's like a lot. I think that's like the type of thing where like if you're gonna study it, you should like really study it, and like working with like probably a traditional Chinese medicine person who knows all that stuff is like probably very beneficial there.
Yeah,
'Cause
kind of tailoring it to you is
yeah,
ideal.
yeah. I don't know what other detox things. I mean, I think the vitamin E for the seed oils themselves, right? Because that's another one. It's like not only do we have the heavy metals and the fat soluble toxins, you also have the actual fat itself, which is toxic, which is PUFAs, because you're walking around in a vat of human seed oil. So that the vitamin E, I think, is beneficial. But yeah, I don't know. I think the winter time, I'm honestly like trying to get fatter, basically, so I can be less cold, um, which is hard for me. But yeah, I don't know. The spring and summer, you'll probably see a lot more trimming up. Another thing though with the fat, I don't know if you pay attention to this, is bloating. Like how much of it is actual fat in your belly, and how much of it is like you're bloated for who knows whatever reason.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I mean, I did want to bring up Ben Greenfield. I've been to his house multiple times, and every time I'd go there for a dinner, he would take everyone out before dinner to his cold pool. And this is back when I was rape eating heavily, and my mentality was that's stressful. You know, I'm in a recovery mode. I do not want to expose myself to 40-degree Fahrenheit water or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I would always just skip that. But you look at Ben and he's, shredded. It's like 8-pack or whatever. And so, I mean, I see some people like that, biohackers that seem to have way higher cold tolerance than I do or did in my metabolic days, so it's interesting. I mean, is it mind over matter? What is it? But
interesting. I mean, so like, yeah, the repeat thing with the stress, like certainly stress is bad, but like stress is also good. It's just like the kind of stress, like as if you don't expose yourself to stress, then you become weak. And like weakness, fat, softness, like these are all like the same kind of concept. So like, I think the stress, so like if like the repeater would say like you should avoid stress at all costs, like then you just become like a soft little baby, right? Like you should basically expose yourself to acute stress that like has the ability to make you stronger, and avoid at all costs the chronic stress that will like kill your metabolism over like the long term. I mean, it's the same thing with the food, right? If you like want to go be keto for a week or two, like whatever, like, or just not eat sugar for a day, like you should be able to do that. You should have the flexibility, or like, like not being able to go 3 hours without a meal because you need a little snack. Oh, you need to get your little bottle. Mommy needs to get your little bottle. Like what? Right? Like you're hunting, you're building like a bridge. Like, I don't know, you're digging a tunnel. You're like traversing across the Alps because you're like in Caesar's army on the way to like go invade France or something. Like you think you're just going to be able to eat at all times. Like, no, you have to be flexible. And I think it's interesting. Maybe like exposure to acute stress is like the type of thing that increases flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the hermetic stress message gets talked about a lot, kind of to excess and a lot of the podcasts and stuff. But I think there's more nuance to it. Like if you've just been through a breakup or a move or you lost your job or something, you probably want to not do heavy hormetic stressors like every day. Take like a couple weeks or a month off to kind of chill. But curious, have you ever done like a fast, like a water fast or just?
I definitely got on the whole fasting train probably in 2018 or 2019. I think the longest I did a dry fast for 36 hours one time, which was, I was sick. And I was under the impression at the time that like by not eating or drinking when you're sick, you'll have autophagy and like you'll heal yourself. I did not recover immediately after the dry fast. It did not work, unfortunately. But the dry fast was interesting because I got really thirsty for like a few hours. And then around 12 hours into it, my mouth started getting wet again. And I started peeing clear. And I was like, what is happening? But then I realized that like, I guess my body like decided to start cannibalizing itself. And so in the process, of course, it generates a lot of water. And so I guess that water had been freed up as a byproduct of like eating my own tissues for energy production. And so that was a very interesting thing to see.
Interesting. Yeah, I have to revisit my deuterium podcast because that whole deuterium depletion message, they really promote the keto diet and fasting and stuff because I guess your mitochondria make metabolic water. but they only do so or do so in large amounts, mostly in a state of, when you're breaking down fat tissue when you're in autophagy. So
yeah,
it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, the whole combustion analogy I found was really cool because it stuck with me from chemistry class in high school. Like combustion is you put hydrocarbons plus oxygen and you get CO2 and water vapor if it's on fire. And that's literally how you survive. You eat hydrocarbons, protein, fat, carbs. You breathe oxygen. Your body combines the two. You produce heat. Right? You're a warm-blooded animal and you exhale carbon dioxide and water vapor and you pee, of course. And then of course the reverse is very interesting. The like plants breathe carbon dioxide and take in water, and then they produce oxygen and a hydrocarbon, which is like cellulose or whatever it is the plant is. So it's like we're literally the opposite of plants, which is like so wild. And the first time, because I'd always understood in chemistry from high school, like how combustion worked. But then I think there was like a time after I was like studying health that I realized like, wait, that's metabolism. It's the same thing, that I was like so surprised, and I thought that was really cool.
It is fascinating. Yeah. I have the book Human Photosynthesis, and it's not that great of a book, but the concept is interesting because I took that to the extreme, being a human solar panel down in Southern California when I started to learn about, light mitochondria and, how cold affects your ability to absorb photons and all that stuff. It's really interesting. But,
were you a breatharian at the time?
I've been liquidarian multiple times because a lot of my, health mentors back in the day promoted that. It was basically, hydration, herbs, superfoods, not eating as much. And yeah, definitely got airy. I think the animal foods are really key to like ground and the protein. And I really like eating like steak every day or ground beef every day. That seems to, balance everything out.
Have you ever like met anyone who was like that claimed to not eat and you believed?
I saw the documentary with, what was his name? I can't remember his name, but it was the Indian guy that has the bald spot, kind of like the Mr. Burns hair, kind of. But he was spotted at a burger joint with a secret camera eating a burger. So, but I know that there has been legitimate research on people that haven't eaten for a very longer than they tell us. Just like people living longer than they've told us.
Yeah,
it wasn't 120 or 130 years. It was like 500 years to 1,000 years. I think the same thing with not eating. I think we are capable of a lot more, circling back to when we were talking about ancient civilizations and being more advanced. That's what's exciting to me about researching and experimenting. It's like, we don't know. Yeah.
We could make a lot better use of our resources. Like one thing that comes to mind is like, I'm sure you've done Bodywork, like, or myofascial release, and it's like you have knots in your tissues. So I was always under the impression, because I had heard from like a masseuse, like when I was in high school, that like knotty muscles were like dehydrated, like spaghetti that wasn't stirred in a pot, and like there wasn't enough water, so the fibers stuck together. But I heard a more compelling interpretation of like the tight tissue lately, which is that it's actually like the muscle is contracted, like subconsciously, due to some weird neurological, psychological, psychosomatic, whatever pattern. And so the muscle is like contracted, like it's stimulated with like electricity, like your nerve energy is keeping it involuntarily contracted. And by doing the massage, doing the myofascial release, you force it gently, basically, to stop contracting and to finally relax. So if you think about this, like, in whatever people talk about energy vampires, like, well, spiritually, as well as like the little light on your dishwasher that's like on all the time. It's like these slow leaks of like electricity in your house, like the red light on your outlet strip that's like on. So you think about like the knots in the tissues as like these sort of energy leaks, because if you're constantly contracting, and that's why you have a knot in your shoulder or your neck or whatever, then like, yeah, you're wasting a ton of energy keeping your muscles contracted. So it's easy to imagine how like a yogi or similar type figure who is fully, relaxed and like has complete control over all the tissues and all the biological processes, it's easy to imagine how that person could make far more use out of much less food than we can,
That's a great point. Yeah. I actually used at my neighbor's house a massage chair, and it was my first time using the good massage chair where it kind of, the flaps go over your shoulders. And it's like pushing your shoulders back. It's the full body.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sold, and I ordered one just to use for 20 minutes a day, because it's almost an hour to drive for me to get a human massage. But yeah, I think that's a really good point about the nervous system and, opening up pathways with just releasing that tension. I tried to do that in my sensory deprivation tank, and I think that can only go so far, where it's more you need to combine that floating and the magnesium with body work. I mean, there's no escaping manual body work. Whether it's
you really need to
robot.
You need to like push on it, basically, like at some point. There's a guy in Miami that I go to that's like, I don't live there, but whenever I visit, I always make sure to have an appointment with him. That like, it's the most painful experience I've ever had, like of any sort, injuries, accidents, whatever. It's like the most physically and emotionally painful thing you can do. I don't know. It's like some combination of pressure point, myofascial release, whatever. He's like a big dude and he has like his little tools, but it's like, at the gym that I was going to down there, which is called Miami Biomechanics, he was like massaging people in the back room basically while I was like doing personal training, and I would hear just like screams and like shouts coming from like the clients. And then of course, I was like, what's that? I should do that. And then, 2 weeks later, I made an appointment and I was the one screaming and like shouting and like involuntarily like gyrating on the table. And it's like not a relaxing or fun experience whatsoever. I think my girlfriend does it as well. She sees more visions than I do, but she has like sort of psychedelic type experiences, like an emotional things that happen. And that has been one of the best therapies, I think, coupled like for doing this kind of like dealing with this kind of like muscle emotional tension. And that coupled with, so I like do functional patterns. I don't know if you're familiar with this. But that's like, you're trying to do it. So the myofascial release is part of it, but basically what you're trying to do is create a state in the body where like the tension is all evenly distributed. So it's not like concentrated in these pockets of like tight muscles that pull your bones out of their positions. And when everything is like kind of evened out and spread in an even distribution, your muscle or your bones naturally return to their normal like archetypal positions. And so then you have good posture. And then you have a much greater economy of motion because your body works like the way it's designed to, which is very efficient. And most people don't use it efficiently. So I do those two things. And in regard to like the physical side, I can't think of better therapies that exist.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm not saying the massage chair is like the best for sure. There's definitely levels that you can go to of like physical rehabilitation, but that's probably the thing I'm most ignorant on. I know, there's people that have their whole business around fascia and all that stuff. I think it's an important piece, but it's not the most important piece or the only piece, or just like my stuff isn't the only piece, or it's all important.
You have to do all of it. You have to really do all of it. But like people tend to like think like people tend to find one thing and then they view the world through the lens of that one thing, which like, I mean, it's also like, I think kind of a problem of like social expectations too. It's like, let's say, and I know that you've like dealt with this, like, let's say you rise to prominence or fame talking about a certain thing, then like your audience definitionally wants to hear about that thing because that's why they're following you. So if you start talking to them about some other thing, maybe some of them will like it, but not all of them, because they followed you to talk about the first thing. And so then I think for a lot of people, it forces them into this pattern where they then like speak just to what their audience wants to hear. And then they never like sort of branch out. And then, that ultimately results in like type of people who are like, you have to fast, and fasting is amazing, and eating, for more than a 4-hour window a day is bad. And then they'll just like never change their mind on that. And then, the keto thing or the sugar thing, whatever it is, people will like view the world through that one lens, and it's like self-reinforcing, and they never really change.
Great point. Yeah, I think it's people not taking responsibility. The whole liver thing has been funny to watch because there's like a $250 million lawsuit. I can't remember, some insane number of people suing him because they thought they could build that body that Brian Johnson has using liver pills and testicles and stuff. His products. It's like, it was pretty obvious. I don't know. That's the take that obvious. I take.
Like, you should know. You should have known. And like, I don't think, I mean, in terms of like an actual lawsuit, like what law, like what, like, did he say, like, if you eat this pills in this bottle, you look like me? Like, no. Like, the real funny thing that I think is that he never even actually took his own pills. Like, his whole thing, like steroid use, like aside, I'm not even mentioning that. His whole thing was like, look, I eat like raw organs, like the actual raw organs, and I look like this. Not like I take like 10 capsules by the handful. You're swallowing water. Like, where's the Liver King video where he's taking capsules by the handful of like ancestral supplements? Like, there isn't. And so like that alone is kind of funny how it's like sort of the sneak attack. Like, hey, I'm gonna go viral off of like eating raw organs, but actually, hey, take these pills. No, I thought that was a nice sleight of hand.
Right. It was totally, there's a sketchy aspect to it, but at the same time, it's like, you guys bought it. You guys bought the product. So, I mean, I have a spleen. I don't know of any other brand. I guess there are other brands that sell the spleen, but I've been looking for good iron sources because I've tried all these different iron supplements. And I feel the best on the spleen, better than bisglycinate. And
the spleen organ one. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Desiccated spleen. Yeah.
That's I think like you can't find spleen, like the actual spleen, in a store, or can you? Like the
organs? I think it's one of the harder organs to get. Yeah. But I do want to start, like, I can get chicken feet at a store that's relatively close. I thought about
chicken feet bone broth is excellent.
I've never made that. Yeah.
It's the superior way to make bone broth. Like, people are always like, buy the beef bones or whatever. And it's like, when I first started making bone broth, I like bought some beef bones because it's like bone broth, right? And then you cook them and it's like, that's not what you're supposed to make. Like, if you cook actual beef bones, you get like calcium tea with floating bone marrow on top, and it's like disgusting. And I didn't realize like the whole point of bone broth was the collagen until at some point like I found the chicken feet thing. And like, you cook chicken feet and like you don't get much fat on top.
Right. You
don't get this sort of like repulsive flavor. I mean, I find it repulsive when it's like the bone marrow cooking in water for like 8 hours. It's like, it's really revolting. You don't get any of that. You throw little herbs, whatever, and then when you put it in the fridge, it's just Jello. And that's and chicken feet are like absurdly inexpensive.
Do you guys eat bone marrow consistently? I just had that for the first time when I was stranded on the way back from Christmas in Sacramento area. And I was shocked how much I liked it. I did not expect. I felt the brain. I mean, I had oysters at the same time, so who knows? But I did feel good, and I thought it tasted delicious.
Yeah, I don't eat bone marrow frequently, but like it happens. Like when we were in Paris a month or two ago, like one of the things you could order at this like traditional French restaurant was like a marrow bone, like, and you just scoop it out and put it on your little bread, and that was really good. But like for me personally, I actually don't do well with a ton of fat. At least like anything other than like dairy fat. Like that's what I really do best on. And so like I'll eat ice cream all day, and like toast and butter and like glob it on there. But if I have like a stew, like a beefy stew with like a lot of fat that gets in there, like it will not make my stomach feel good. Which I don't think anyone talks about, right? Like your body may be different, and like the set of like things that health influencers speak about is very small. And people want to say like high fat is good, nutrient density, whatever. And it's like, sure, but like maybe you're not set up to digest that much fat, which like I clearly am not. And other people are. And it's like they can put butter on their ribeyes and eat 5 of them and like be fine. And like I would want to kill myself if I did that.
It's a great point. Yeah, I think we're similar in that way. I had a genetic consultation, based on my genome, and he was saying I have more farmer genetics than hunter genetics, which I guess people are generally either farmer genetics or hunter. I don't know where this theory comes from, but I do really great on pasta. I can eat a huge bowl of spaghetti with some meatballs, and tomato sauce, and I feel incredible. I feel almost the same as if I eat a steak. Maybe a little slightly more strength and power with the steak, but Um, yeah, I last night I tried olive oil for the first time on my steak, and I was blown away how good that was.
Oh, nice. You should turn that into like a chimichurri kind of thing. Like if you ever experimented with that. Um, Also, olive oil and ice cream is another fun one for you.
Wow,
Yeah,
interesting.
perks of dating an olive oil influencer.
I'll have to
Like,
extend my eating window. I'm finding a 4 hour eating window. It's so hard to fit everything in. So I think that's why people do like 6 to 8.
yeah, I don't know how I could eat 3,000 calories of nutrient dense food in like 4 hours. Just like I eat my breakfast of like 3 eggs and like some lamb sausage and like sourdough bread and toast and like some little orange juice and liver, and I'm good for like 6 hours. I mean, it's probably like 800 calories, and it's like I'm not even remotely hungry for like that many hours.
From what I heard,
Uh,
the worst is like skipping lunch, which I guess people do, because then the idea is to extend the before and after when you sleep,
mhm,
if you want to capitalize on like, fat burning and stuff.
mhm.
But it's the worst if you eat breakfast, skip lunch, and then eat dinner, because you're pretty much getting no autophagy
Yeah,
ever.
you're like you're getting all the downsides and benefits
Right.
at that rate.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But
The hunter farmer thing is really interesting. That you mentioned it in that dichotomy, because like so basically Europe was, at least as far as current anthropology knows, Europe was occupied. Western Europe was occupied by sort of these people called Neolithic farmers, who are the ones that like invented grain agriculture. They came probably from the Near East. They're like the most close living descendants actually today live on the island of Sardinia in Italy. They had grain, cattle, whatever. But then 3 to 5,000 years ago, or over 5 to 3,000 years ago, the Indo-Europeans who come from the Black Sea area, like north of the Black Sea in Ukraine, invaded Europe as well as India and Iran. And they brought, of course, their language, which is the European languages, but also they were like a hunting sort of warrior type of people. And so they like basically showed up on chariots, like, being hunters, and like kind of conquered Europe very easily because hunters conquer farmers. Well, often like that's usually how that works. So like depending on like where your ancestry like falls in the line between like the Neolithic farmers, who are like you consider like the indigenous Europeans, and like the Indo-Europeans who invaded, and like where the balance is, like maybe you'll have more tendency for one diet over another.
interesting. I've actually seen entire meme accounts about this, and you just made it click for me finally, because I'm like, what are they talking about with like Indo-European and
Mhm.
Neolithic? Like, that makes total sense. Wow. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
I'm more on the Neolithic side then, because I mean,
Probably.
people know if they don't do well on grains immediately, right? That's the whole gluten-free thing, and um,
Yeah. Yeah. Like I do okay on moderate grains. Like I would not be able to do Sean Baker's diet. No way. Like all that meat and
right.
butter and nothing else.
Mhm.
No. But he probably would not want to eat what I eat. So I mean, at the end of the day, and I think this is probably a good, like, timely sort of conclusion point as well, is that like your body is likely very distinct and subject to many environmental and hereditary and lifestyle circumstances that mean whatever's optimal for you is going to be very, very different from whatever's optimal for other people. And while we can talk at length about trying to get general rules, which like I think everyone can agree on, like seed oils are terrible, and like pesticides are bad, right? Like the actual implementation of like what you should eat and how you should live, you need to really experiment on yourself.
I love it. Don't eat Tostitos, eat Masa Chips.
Exactly.
That was great. That was a lot of fun, Stephen. Thanks so much. And so people can go to, is it masachips.com? Is that your website?
MasaChips.com. I am on Instagram, really tan man, which is spelled exactly how it sounds. And yeah, I think there you have it.
I love it.
So
I
I
think
think you have a discount code, right?
Blackburn should work.
I think
Yeah.
it's
And
Blackburn. Yeah.
I just noticed you have a subscription too. That's cool. I should sign
Yeah.
up for that,
Yeah.
even though pretty stocked right now.
Yeah.
um,
Wanting the Masa payout, the Masa commission payout and more Masa is hilarious.
well, like I said, I highly recommend anyone that's like feels like they don't have time to eat in a day, which are often my days. Just things happen, just nonstop, chaotic, hectic days. Um, I like the Eden brand beans, like cannellini beans or black beans or navy, or you mix Great Northern beans, any variation with your chips. And you could dip it, use those beans as a dip in those chips.
Nice.
Incredible instant meal, emergency meal. It's incredible. So
I'm a big fan of just cheese, just throwing like any sort of cheese, raw or broiled, if you want to get more involved, but just masa chips and any sort of cheese also, that really does it for me.
I didn't think about, I have a friend in Boston, Willie, he makes is like meals, like nachos all the time. And I did not consider making nachos out of your chips. That's a really good idea.
You should for sure do that. I have that for lunch, like, maybe every other day.
Wow. Yeah. Any particular cheese that's your favorite? Like,
we do a cheddar. So we have a raw milk cheddar that we get from some Amish farmer that I really like. Gruyere is great for melting.
Okay. I have access to some raw milk cheddar. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, whether, some cheeses are better for melting, some cheeses are better raw, but regardless, like basically any kind of cheese. I probably wouldn't put a brie on it, but like any sort of hard cheese, and masa is amazing.
Wow. Do you ever do any like spices on it or on top of the cheese?
We're actually working on a flavor for masa. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I may have more to say about that in the not just in the future, but personally, I like my food to be just, high quality and simple. Salt. Redmond salt is like the primary seasoning that I'll use.
Nice. So I was trying to think of nachos at restaurants. They put, leeks on it often.
Interesting.
Chopped leeks. I don't know.
Yeah, we do like ground beef, cheese, salt, sometimes like sauteed onions. And then there's like a local organic salsa we get from like a farm, and that's it.
And that could be a whole meal. Wow.
Well, it's a whole meal. That's literally my lunch today.
I'm totally going to try that. I love the easy meals. That sounds so easy. And just put it on 350 in the oven or
I think so. So Mia makes the meat separately. And then she puts the chips down, sprinkle the shredded cheese, or it depends on how involved you want to be. Ideal, peak effort would be like chips down, shredded cheese, stick it in the broiler underneath the oven just for like a minute, right? You don't need to bake anything. And then the meat gets made the ground beef just gets made on a pan, and like I eat it basically raw. It's like cooked for like a minute until it's just not cold anymore, and then that's it. Goes on top.
Wow. Cool. All right. I'm on it.
Nice.
I love it. Well, thanks, Stephen. And stick around as we close out the show. This was awesome. That wraps up today's show. I love the discussion that we had regarding cannabis and seed oils. Having been in the cannabis industry for a few years in Southern California, I witnessed the behavior of what you would call stoners, or people that frequently ingest cannabis every day, all day. I would see what my coworkers consumed in the dispensary, and then I would go out in the field and go to people's homes and apartments and see what bags of chips and different processed foods that they had laying around their kitchen and living room. So I actually gathered a significant amount of data over those few years. And I think Stephen was spot on with combining cannabis, the estrogenic effects, the absence of aromatase inhibition, estrogenic seed oils, and you just combine all of these things and you have hormonal dysregulation, whether it's male or female. But in men, it's very obvious to see this decline in testosterone. And then you just add beer on top of that, and it gets even worse with the estrogenic effect. Not to say that these substances are bad in and of themselves, but when people are stacking all of these things together, that's where you get the toxicological synergy, where you get extreme dysregulation of the human body. So I think what Stephen is doing is really cool with Masa Chips. He's making this common product, which is tortilla chips, actually beneficial for your health instead of detrimental. Like I grew up with Tostitos. And I could say that those did not do my body good. Whereas with his chips, you're getting potassium, you're getting vitamin A, you're getting vitamin K2, and so many other nutrients that you aren't going to get in your average store-bought chip. So if you're interested in trying them out, you can go to masachips.com and then use the discount code Blackburn, and you'll save a little bit of money. And my website is matt-blackburn.com. You can read about my CLF protocol, and you can see all of my recommended products. Recently, I've been attracted back to the Magnetico sleep pad. This is something that I've used off and on over the years. I believe this is a really revolutionary, underrated product, misunderstood. And I think that's due to the products that we tend to see that just go around your wrist with neodymium magnets. Dr. Bondley, who I've interviewed on the show, eloquently has explained the difference between unipolar fields and bipolar fields, and the similarity between these Niken type products that you just put around your wrist, or you're just applying magnets to the body. You're getting hit with both poles. That's why it's called bipolar, and that is similar to acupuncture, which you shouldn't do more than once a week. Otherwise, you deplete the chi and you actually get diminishing returns. Whereas with a unidirectional field, which is what we get from the earth, that does not have diminishing returns. And it's only a benefit, and it doesn't deplete the chi, and it doesn't throw off your immune system when you overdo it, because you can't overdo it because it's natural to human beings. We're getting exposed to this all the time, wherever you are on planet Earth. I love light therapy. I love water chemistry, but I think if I had to choose between one of the three, light, water, or magnetism, I would focus on magnetism personally. It's just the most interesting one to me. And I actually built a lodestone bathtub here, which is a bipolar field, because lodestones, magnetite that's been struck by lightning, have poles on them. But that is therapeutic. It's something that I shouldn't use and take a bath in every day. That is more of a once or twice a week occasion. But with the Magnetico, it's amplifying the Earth's magnetic field. So I'm getting natural magnetism and only one polarity. Being here in the northern hemisphere, it's the south polarity. The magnetochelation effect is the most fascinating to me. They've done studies with this product showing just one night on it decreases arsenic by 32%, lead by 22%, mercury by 28%, nickel by 6.5%, and tin by 10.5%. And then after a second night, combined with a heavy metal chelator called DMSA, the lead goes up to 80%, the mercury excretion goes up to 45%, and the tin goes up to 57%. And from my research, these metals are ubiquitous in our environment. We can't escape them. So it's more about integrating things like the Magnetico into our life, where we're just naturally always moving these metals through our body that are coming in. That's why I sell Shilajit as the panacea product from Mitolife, because it assists in this process of heavy metal chelation. If you want to check that one out and other products, you can go to mitolife.co. And all of these products go in line with my CLF protocol that I've created for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And all of those products are compounds that have benefited me tremendously in my journey. And I still take them every day. Sometimes I'll cycle some of the Mitolife supplements and I'll take time off of them. And I think that's wise to do with pretty much every supplement that you take. Just take a day or two off and maybe take a week or a month off. And that's a way to tell if you can't feel the supplements that you're taking, to really dial it in and see which ones are actually making a difference. So if you want to keep up with my latest research and experiments, you can head over to the Mitolife Academy on YouTube. I've been sharing my research on ketosis and the ketogenic diet over there. And it's only $15 a month. You can cancel anytime. It's all through YouTube. And you gain access to all the previous 2 years of videos and content that I've created there. So that is all for today. I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.